This is usually followed by questions and answers to questions, statements by ministers, items on the public business, and private members' motions. But before we begin, let's try a parliamentary trivia question. The Cabinet initiates government policies and programs and is responsible for the general direction and control of government. Is this true or false? Get the answer at the end of this introduction to the lower house. Under public business, Minister of Justice Delroy Chuck is to make his sectoral presentation. During his presentation, you can expect Minister Chuck to give an update on the modernization of the court system. You could also hear about the major boost from the Government of Canada through the $1.3 billion Social Justice Project. The project will strengthen and promote a rights-based and gender-sensitive justice system that achieves equitable outcomes for all Jamaicans. It will also assist in modernizing the court's records management systems. You should know that the Jamaican legal system is known as a common law system. The common law system is one of the three major types of legal systems in the world. Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries Pearnel Charles Jr. and Member of Parliament for Manchester North Western, Mr. Mikael Phillips, are down to make their sectoral presentations. For your information, the Agriculture and Fisheries Ministry has been spearheading several cross-sector partnerships aimed at driving food production and supporting economic growth. Also, there has been an increase in production in several areas of the sector. That's what's on the agenda. It should be noted, though, that elements of the day's agenda can be added, removed, or replaced. If you're planning to attend a session, here are some rules you should keep in mind. No visitor shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No photography, videography, or sketching of the proceedings is allowed, unless so authorized by the presiding officer. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent, and there should be no smoking inside the Parliamentary building. It's almost time to go to the main event, but before that, let's get the answer to the trivia question we asked: true or false? The Cabinet initiates government policies and programs and is responsible for the general direction and control of the government. It's true. In fact, the Cabinet must consist of the Prime Minister and not less than 11 other ministers. No upper limit is specified. Not more than 4 ministers must be appointed from the Senate, and they may have portfolio responsibilities. The other Cabinet ministers are appointed from the House of Representatives. Cabinet ministers may be assisted by ministers of state and parliamentary secretaries. Each minister conducts the ordinary business of his ministry without referring to any other minister. However, important matters, especially those which may become the subject of discussion in Parliament, are brought before Cabinet for discussion and decision. Now over to the proceedings.
The Speaker at birth.
Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we, thine unworthy servants, here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that, we having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
please be seated. This honorable House now resumes its sitting. Which mic am I using? Call of the roll.
Mrs. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Samuda, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malou Fort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Terry Long, Ms. Smith, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown-Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Henry Kitts, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright, Ms. Morrison,
Members, as usual, it is indeed a great honor and my privilege to welcome everyone to the continuation of our sectoral debate. I want to pause for a moment to extend special welcome to a number of persons who are here with us this evening in the gallery, and I notice the gallery is very full this evening. I want to mention and welcome especially Mr. Dermot Spence, Permanent Secretary from the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, Ms. Grace Ann Stewart McFarlane, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Justice, Mr. Derek McCoy, not here. I was wondering if my eyes had grown dim because I'm one of his students and I'm not recognizing him there. We have with us this afternoon Ms. Paula Llewellyn, King's Counsel, Director of Public Prosecutions, Mrs. Lona Brown, Yes, I see Mrs. Brown, former Administrator General. Mrs. Stacey Ann McCarthy, acting Administrator General. We have with us this afternoon Miss Gabriella Phillips. Is Miss Phillips here? I'm expecting her. The daughter of Speaker of the Opposition spokesperson this evening, Mr. Phillips. Students, teachers from the Mile Gully High School, other specially invited guests who are here to support the persons who are speaking this evening. And I know I see the Minister of Agriculture's wife sitting in front. And I'm looking all about anxiously for the former Speaker of the House, the Honorable, I know he's here because I saw him, but I'm not seeing him. But I want to mention him. He is the former Speaker of the House, the Honorable Pearnel Charles, and not just the former Speaker, but this evening I think more than the former Speaker. He's a proud father of the Minister of Agriculture, Pearnel Charles, who speaks this evening. And of course, his daughter is a member of Parliament, and she's here with us as a member of the group, but I know they sit specially this evening and proud to be related to the Minister of Agriculture. I am looking, I'm not seeing the High Commissioner from the British High Commission. Yes, former Speaker, I'm not going to allow you to sit without recognizing you. But I just said, I know that you are not just a former Speaker. This evening, you're here as a proud father of the Minister of Agriculture, the Honorable Pearnel Charles Jr. President of the Transport Operators Development, Mr. Edgerton Newman, I'm not sure he's here, and we're expecting Mr. Louis Barton, President of the Jamaica Association of Taxi Operators, to join us this evening. Members, I'm going to crave your indulgence for my own self as I welcome everyone, and I also welcome all persons who are joining us online via the various social media platforms. I crave your indulgence as I ask you to allow me to take a special moment this afternoon to welcome someone, Janelle Atala, from the National Irrigation Commission. And I'm doing that and craving your indulgence because I have to share a quick story. I have in South Trelawney my own 3 Golden Girls Club, for which Miss Atala, Miss Yvonne Dalrymple, who is not here, are my other members. I'm, of course, the most golden of all the girls there. However, in age, you know, in age, that's why I'm saying so, because you know the significance of the Golden Girls is age. And both these women, Yvonne Dalrymple and Janelle Atala, who is part of the Irrigation Commission, have shared a strong interest and dedication to the work I have undertaken these past 20 years as Member of Parliament in South Trelawney. And we, as a trio, continue to empower our communities and strengthen the link between the resources and the results we get when an election is called. I look forward to their continued support and fruitful commitment in helping Jamaica to be the place to live, work, and raise our families. I thank you all, and I know this is going to be a wonderful sitting, and there are a lot of expectations. The Minister of Justice speaks this evening, and I'm not going to tell you where my relationship with him starts because he doesn't show it. I'm not going to minister because they wouldn't believe So I want to welcome you all to the sitting of the House this afternoon. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We certainly have a full gallery, and I join you in welcoming all those present. Madam Speaker, at this point, I would ask if items on the agenda could be suspended and we go straight to public business so we can have the presentations by the ministers, Minister Honorable Delroy Chuck, Minister of Justice, as well as the Hon Pearnel Charles Jr., Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, to make their sectoral presentations, and after which Mr. Mikael Phillips, Member of Parliament from Manchester Northwest, will also make his presentation. Thank you, Madam
Members,
Speaker.
the question before the House is that we suspend the items on the agenda and go immediately to the item on the agenda, public business, to allow us to begin hearing the presentations of the sectoral debate scheduled for this afternoon. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader. Minister, the Honorable Delroy Chuck.
Madam Speaker, permission is sought to speak from a seat other than my own.
Yes, permission.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise this afternoon in this honorable House to address this Parliament and the nation and to give a report on my stewardship of the Ministry of Justice. I note with a sense of humility, Madam Speaker, my appreciation for staying strong at the wicket in this my 8th consecutive year as Minister of Justice. This in itself, Madam Speaker, is not an easy feat, as I shoulder my duties as the representative for the great constituency of Northeast St. Andrew, serving as their Member of Parliament for 26 years. Madam Speaker, I would like to thank the voters of Northeast St. Andrew.
One moment, Speaker. There's a loud hum within the Parliament. Please. We have done all that we need to do to procure our new mics. And so we are operating on one that is limping ahead. So I'm going to ask you to be quiet so that we can hear our speakers this afternoon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to thank the voters of Northeast St. Andrew, having returned me six times here, and they don't need to tell me hi. I live in the constituency. Some of my delegates are here, Madam Speaker. My 2 councillors are here. But I would like, first of all, Madam Speaker, to thank you and the staff of Parliament for the tremendous support that you have given to us as members of Parliament as we make our presentation. I also, Madam Speaker, extremely grateful to the Prime Minister for the trust he has reposed in me in undertaking the vital role of ensuring that Jamaica's justice system functions fairly and effectively. I'd also, Madam Speaker, like to thank my colleagues in Parliament and in the House, notwithstanding what people see and believe that we are volatile towards one another. We do get along very well.
Yes.
Every now and then, they invite me for a drink downstairs. I must, Madam Speaker, acknowledge the sterling service of Team Ministry of Justice, piloted by the Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Grace Stuart McFarlane, in sharing the burden and difficulties, even as we work steadfastly towards our goal of promoting justice for peace and harmony. Madam Speaker, the Jamaican public deserves no less, and with the assistance of the Minister's team, we are well on our way to achieving this primary goal, making justice accessible to everyone as we work towards a first-class justice system. Madam Speaker, the judiciary, under the steady leadership of Chief Justice, the Honorable Mr. Justice Brian Sykes, and the staff of the Court Administration Division have played a significant role in steering the process towards ensuring that Jamaica's justice system achieves the goal of being one of the finest, if not the best, in the Caribbean and by extension internationally. To our esteemed stakeholders, Attorney General Derek McCoy, Solicitor General Marlene Aldred and our team, the DPP who is here with us today, Madam Speaker, if I might say the usually vocal DPP, Mrs. Paula Llewellyn and her staff, the Director, Court Administration Division, Mrs. Tricia Cameron Anglin and her staff, for the continuous drive towards improving the justice system. To the Acting Administrator General, Mrs. Stacey Ann Carty and her staff, our key affiliated agencies and departments of the Ministry of Justice, including the Executive Director of the Legal Aid Council, Mrs. Diane Watson, and her staff, and the Victim Services Branch, led by Mrs. Dion Dawn Binns, the Director. Special appreciation, Madam Speaker, in order for the President of the Court of Appeal, the Honorable Mr. Justice Patrick Brooks, appeal judges, and the hard-working Court of Appeal staff. The Supreme and Parish Court judges and their staff for the yeoman's service and support to the Chief Justice to ensure that Jamaica gets the best justice system. My heartfelt gratitude to our international partners, the European Union delegation in Jamaica, Global Affairs Canada, United States Agency for International Development, USAID, the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Section in the United States Embassy, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, and United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF. These partners, Madam Speaker, have provided much needed financial and technical support to build on the achievements of our ongoing justice sector reform programs. To my trusted team of close protection officer, Sergeant Howard Hamilton, my driver, Mr. O'Neill Ennis, I'm grateful for their support. Also, my two counsellors, Madam Speaker, I think they're here, Councillor Joy Cottrell and Deputy Mayor Winston Ennis, and my constituency liaison officer, Wayne Lawrence, all of whom have shouldered the weight of the work in the constituency and assisting in ensuring a 7th consecutive term as Member of Parliament. Last, Madam Speaker, but not least, my wife and my family members. Unfortunately, they're not here. My wife is enjoying my 6th grandchild up in Northern Carolina, Northern Carolina. I'm from Clarendon, so you will. That's all right, that's all right. And I'm not there to enjoy the fellowship. Madam Speaker, my sincerest thanks to you all. Madam Speaker, 2022-23 has been a remarkable and successful year for the Ministry of Justice. We can declare proudly that the justice system is well on its way to becoming a first-class justice system. While, Madam Speaker, we acknowledge that much more needs to be done, it is clear that the justice sector has never been in a better position now since independence. Madam Speaker, there have been significant and far-reaching improvements at all levels for the Jamaican citizen to access justice in a timely manner. Madam Speaker, as Minister of Justice, I can say that while we work towards a 5-star first-class justice system, we have not reached there as yet. But I can say, Madam Speaker, that there are various sectors within the Ministry of Justice that have reached 1 or 2 stars, and I will point them out, even while the whole justice system works towards a 5-star first-class, world-standard justice system. So, Madam Speaker, shortly we will issue our booklet. Half of it will consist of data in the appendices, because if I try to speak on each area, it might take me much longer than I deserve or, for this afternoon. Madam Speaker, I begin with the Administrator General's Department, the AGD, which has been a model of success as an executive agency. The department has been voted the best executive agency, the best customer service agency, and the most creative agency. To date, Madam Speaker, 3 of its customer service team members have won awards in the Civil Servant of the Year competitions for 2019-20, 2021, and 21-22. No, please, members of the gallery can't clap, by the way.
Members, let me quickly remind you that as happy as you are and excited, we're not allowed to clap or do anything. Yes.
This year, Madam Speaker, the Administrator General Department celebrates 150 years of existence, a significant milestone, making it even more appropriate, therefore, to highlight the outstanding work of this agency as it serves the people of Jamaica. I publicly acknowledge Mrs. Lona Brown and ask her and the 3 customer service persons to stand up in the gallery. While the Parliament and Madam Speaker, while the Parliament and a grateful nation really appreciate and thank them for their service.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, Mrs. Lona Brown recently retired as the Administrator General and Chief Executive Officer, having given the department over 27 years of sterling and dedicated service. Under her leadership, the Administrator General Department transitioned to an executive agency, received ISO 9000-2015 Quality Management System Standard from the National Certification Body of Jamaica, and was the recipient of several customer service awards. Madam Speaker, she has served the department and the country extremely well, and this Parliament salutes her and wishes her the best in retirement. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Justice is very proud of the achievements of the Administrator General's Department. Since Mrs. Brown assumed leadership in 1996, there has been steady and detectable improvement in the operations of this key department of the Ministry of Justice. Given the time constraint, it is not possible to list all the achievements. So please refer, as you will get the booklet shortly, to Appendix 1 for greater details, while I share a few significant ones here. I will ask for the booklets to be circulated. Not only will the booklets be circulated, Madam Speaker, but those persons who are listening in can get a flip copy of the booklet on the MOJ, Ministry of Justice website, or also on Instagram or Twitter, so they can follow, not necessarily my speech, but to see in the appendices all the outstanding data that we have collected in the appendices. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Justice is really very proud, and I would say, Madam Speaker, that here at the Administrator General Department, they are now getting instruments of administration within 3 months. Now, Madam Speaker, this is a remarkable achievement, because in the past, instruments of administration to be able to deal with the estate of deceased persons oftentimes took many months, sometimes years. Now you're getting an instrument of administration within 3 months. Madam Speaker, in 1996, when Mrs. Brown took over, the average up to then was the closing of about 50 files per month, per year. Since then, the average over the last 27 years has exceeded 200 files per year. But, Madam Speaker, in the last 5 years, this number has risen to over 500 closed files annually. This, Madam Speaker, shows that the Administrator General's Department is definitely not 1 star, certainly 2 star, and maybe 3 star. I won't say they've reached 4 or 5. I expect matters to improve even more as we go towards the 5 star. Madam Speaker, we have more files being closed than are being opened, which means a steady reduction of the backlog of cases. Madam Speaker, it is interesting to note that up to the end of March 2023, the department was managing in excess of $50 billion of real estate. That is indeed a heavy burden, Madam Speaker, and my guidance to the incoming Administrator General is to urge beneficiaries to settle their differences so that more estate files can be closed. In particular, to have most of these properties disposed of, primarily to the beneficiaries. Madam Speaker, there's always protracted and lingering dispute over what is called deadlift. In truth, Madam Speaker, real estate, $50 billion, is being tied up because beneficiaries can't agree. And what is important, Madam Speaker, is for the Administrator General, as I've explained, to get the beneficiaries using mediation, conciliation, to agree as to how they will share up the properties. For the Administrator General Department, Madam Speaker, to be managing $50 billion worth of real estate is too burdensome. And not only that, Madam Speaker, when they're not distributed, the properties deteriorate because there's not enough money to maintain them and to pay some to the beneficiaries. So, Madam Speaker, the guidance being given is basically where the beneficiaries don't want the property or can't agree that they be sold on the open market and then the proceeds shared amongst the beneficiaries. But, Madam Speaker, it's just not appropriate for the Administrator General Department to have so much real estate that effectively is deteriorating, when in fact, if they were distributed or sold, those properties can improve in value. So, Madam Speaker, I congratulate the Administrator General's Department under Mrs. Lona Brown, and her legacy is an Administrator General's Department that is result-focused and customer-driven, and we expect that this outstanding performance will continue. Madam Speaker, I turn to social justice. During my presentation last year, Madam Speaker, I spoke about the launch of the Ministry's public education campaign to increase awareness and the use of our social justice services. We have reached and assisted thousands of Jamaicans to access our free services, ensuring that our citizens see alternative justice services as methods, as the primary means to resolve disputes, avoid conflicts, and settle contentious matters that affect their daily lives. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Justice is convinced that many abuses, violent crimes, and gruesome murders can be avoided if people use our justice services before acting hastily or in an irresponsible manner, which oftentimes leads to death and regret. Our people need to use these services. Madam Speaker, it is primarily for these reasons that the Ministry of Justice is promoting justice for peace and harmony. We strongly believe that if the disputing parties visit one of our 20 restorative justice centers or seek mediation, many personal conflicts and disappointments can be avoided. Only last year, Madam Speaker, we opened 2 new restorative justice centers, one in my good friend Southwest constituency at Greenwich Farm, and one in my colleague in Northwest St. Andrew. And these have started to do some good work. And believe me, Madam Speaker, we want to open more. And we will open at least another 2 during the course of this year. Madam Speaker, we are vigorously promoting the simple theme, talk it out, not fight it out. In schools and communities, we have been urging everyone to avoid fights and other conflicts as a way of settling disputes and prevent unpredictable and deadly outcomes. I am pleased, Madam Speaker, to share that in the 2022-23 financial year, the Ministry of Justice, with the assistance of the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, operationalized the Social Justice Division. This minister allowed the restorative justice, child diversion, victim services, and mediation to be under one umbrella, thereby allowing for greater oversight of the programs, better coordination, and an overall increase in the efficiency of the services being delivered. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Justice is committed to ensuring that all our citizens, from whatever socioeconomic background, educational level, race, age, or gender, have access to and participate in the justice process as we continue promoting justice for peace and harmony. Indeed, Madam Speaker, we have a toll-free line which can easily be accessed. All a person who needs assistance, legal advice, direction to a justice service, they just need to call 1-888-JUSTICE, 888-587-8423, 888-JUSTICE, and the operator will give them information. If they need legal advice, a number will be given for them to call the legal counsel. The legal counsel will put an attorney onto the person to give legal advice, preliminary advice, not representing the person, but at least to say where you can find a lawyer, which lawyer is in your particular district or in the town, and also to give them information as to how they can get further legal advice. But if it is a person who needs a justice service, the operator will direct them to a justice service. So the point, Madam Speaker, is no Jamaican citizen should feel that they can't get justice. They have easy access by calling 888-JUSTICE and get direction as to how they can access justice services. Madam Speaker, restorative justice, also known as RJ, has proven to be an effective tool for healing broken relationships, which is why we refer to RJ as justice that heals. The work, Madam Speaker, of the Restorative Justice Program is to resolve conflicts and restore peace within homes, schools, communities, and the wider society. Frequent matters referred to the RJ program include family disputes, assaults, malicious destruction of property, and larceny. Madam Speaker, RJ is one of our highly valued tools for promoting justice for peace and harmony. Madam Speaker, in 2022-23, we completed 100% of the RJ conferences projected. The conferences, Madam Speaker, also had a success rate of 79%, with the remaining 21% reaching partial agreements in some instances, while some matters remain unresolved and return to the referral agents for resolution. This data, Madam Speaker, shows that RJ is an overwhelming success. Madam Speaker, when you can have 80% success rate, 4 out of 5 persons get healing, restoration of relationship, that is success. And Madam Speaker, if you look in the Appendix 2, you will see the number of matters that have been referred where there has been healing. Indeed, Madam Speaker, when matters come from the courts, the success rate is over 90%. But we get referral from the police, from the community. Madam Speaker, restorative justice is a major healing tool within our communities, within our schools, within our homes. And that is why, Madam Speaker, we have teamed up with my good friend, Minister Favourable Williams, working with the schools to ensure that we take restorative justice to every school. And my good friend, Minister Favourable Williams, and I frequently visit several schools. We went out to Haile Selassie School with Member of Parliament Angela Brownberg. We had a fantastic time. And we have been, Madam Speaker, together, many schools. And we plan, Madam Speaker, to continue this program because we know that it heals. We went, Madam Speaker, with my MP Dennis, my good friend Dennis, out there to Jose Marti School, and we had a great time. The people are so receptive. We soon go. We soon get there. And Madam Speaker, because the program is so successful, we recently, last year, had a memorandum of understanding with 14 denominational groups representing over 3,000 churches, because we intend to take RJ into the churches, working with the churches so that the communities can better understand. Because, Madam Speaker, the real challenge is to get people to buy into the program. If persons know about the program and get a restorative justice facilitator to assist them, then a lot of conflicts can be resolved. And therefore, Madam Speaker, it is why the Ministry of Justice, thanks to the Ministry of Finance, we have funding to be able to roll out restorative justice and the other social programs right across Jamaica, because Jamaica, in far too many homes, need healing. The amount of abuses and distress you have in the homes and the neighborhoods and the communities. We as a people, Madam Speaker, must encourage these persons to seek help. And RJ can offer that help. So we have trained, Madam Speaker, over 1,000 persons. And recently, we did refresher training and the commissioning of an additional 150 RJ facilitators, basically, Madam Speaker, to make sure that right across Jamaica, if there are families, parties in dispute, they can get a facilitator to assist them to heal. So, Madam Speaker, so, Madam Speaker, the truth of the matter is that RJ is a success, but we expect that it should be even more successful if we can get it into the nooks and crannies across Jamaica. Madam Speaker, child diversion, our newest social justice service, was operationalized in 2020 following the passage of the Child Diversion Act 2018. Madam Speaker, this assists youngsters between 12 and 17 who get into trouble, and the courts and the police are the main agencies to refer them to the child diversion officer. And when they come, Madam Speaker, especially from the courts, we try to mentor them. They get a psychological report in many cases. And, Madam Speaker, in most cases, the mentorship, the psychological support they get, assists them in going straight. Indeed, Madam Speaker, with child diversion, last year, we were able to assist 161 children to complete their diversion interventions and had their charges in court dismissed. Madam Speaker, the program is so successful that one of the complaints that we get from the mentors, many of them are JPs, who mentor these youngsters, is that you can't divest them, you can't get rid of the children. The children want to remain with the mentors. even after the 6-month program is over. And to be fair, the mentors have been saying they still continue. The program, Madam Speaker, has been a success with the challenge, Minister of Finance, that we need to double up the number of child diversion officers in the parishes because they're coming under stress. And therefore, we hope, and I think we have got permission to increase, but we need to double up in virtually every parish, and we're training also more mentors. Madam Speaker, at the Ministry of Justice, we not only seek to resolve conflicts and divert from conflict, but we also assist persons who are victims of crime. We do so through therapeutic interventions that are delivered by professional and confidential staff at the Victim Services branch. Madam Speaker, we have a lot of Jamaicans who suffer from criminal activity, criminal violence, from abuses, from domestic violence. And Madam Speaker, this is where the Victim Services really provide a very useful and important service. When persons are abused or suffer from criminality, Madam Speaker, oftentimes they suffer in silence. And in silence, they often wonder, how can they take revenge? And one of the problems, Madam Speaker, as I go around and I encourage victims of crime and of violence and abuses, is really to seek help at the Victim Services Office. Because if they don't, you find that revenge, retaliation, thoughts build up in their minds. And these are the ones that frequently, they carry out another act of violence. And the effect of it, Madam Speaker, is you have a cycle of violence, which is what, unfortunately, happens across far too many homes and communities. A cycle of violence. And once again, Madam Speaker, we encourage parties to seek the help. Go to the Victim Service Office. Get counseling.
Yes.
Let people assist you. If the abuser is well known to you, see if both the abuser and the abused can go to restorative justice. And Madam Speaker, all the evidence suggests that the abused and the abuser, when they get to restorative justice, the healing process not only begins, but oftentimes the parties hug up and cry on one another's shoulders. So, Madam Speaker, we urge Jamaicans who have been abused to really seek assistance at the Victim Services offices, one of which we have in every parish. Child diversion, restorative justice, Victim Services, we have an office in every parish, and we need them to be more utilized to heal the nation, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the mediation program saw positive outcomes in the last financial year. This program, Madam Speaker, was launched in the Islands Parish Courts on December the 1st, 2021 by MOJ, Ministry of Justice, and it formed part of our efforts to not only facilitate greater access to justice by the public, but also support the judicial system in its drive to reduce court clearance rates. Results of a snapshot performance evaluation, Madam Speaker, recently done, conducted for a significant portion of the financial year, are very encouraging. Based on a representative sample of cases assessed from the mediation services, between January and September 2022, it was found that 29% of the cases were completed on the same day. An average of 16 working days elapsed from date of referral to completion. 87% of the cases were completed by the next court return date, and 75% of the cases, Madam Speaker, were fully or partially resolved. 17% remain unresolved and 8% pending. This, Madam Speaker, will assist the Ministry in the further rollout and expansion of mediation across the parish courts, helping us, Madam Speaker, to speed up access to justice for every citizen who might ordinarily not be able to afford any other service. In some instances, Madam Speaker, these mediation services provide the opportunity to avoid litigation and the attendant costs and legal challenges. Madam Speaker, I know you're aware, because I know you use mediation, and many attorneys use mediation. The truth of the matter is that mediation needs to be better used. Madam Speaker, when parties participate in mediation, they can control the outcome. When they go to court, they present their evidence, and the judge rules. One party wins, and the other party loses. The party who wins says, justice has been done. The party who loses says, no justice in the court. The truth of the matter, Madam Speaker, is that they need as much as possible to get a mediator to assist them to come to a compromise solution where each party give and take. Madam Speaker, especially, and I will come to that later, in the Supreme Court, when they have matters pending, they have to be in court waiting 4 years and more to have a case tried. And I oftentimes explain to persons, can you imagine just what happened when 2 drivers come on Flatbridge, and neither one wants to reverse, neither one wants to move. That is what is happening in the courts, 2 parties waiting on the judge to say who moves back. And Madam Speaker, as happened at Flatbridge, eventually, everybody comes, assist them, and say, we're waiting now, you move back. Madam Speaker, if mediation is access, it would free up so much resources that the parties have protracting. And Madam Speaker, I will say later, we need to get mediation going. Madam Speaker, I move to the Justice of the Peace. In the last financial year, 829 JPs were commissioned across 11 parishes, including a few MPs who took advantage and wanted to become JPs. The Minister, Madam Speaker, anticipates that the current financial year will see another 900 JPs being commissioned across the island. Madam Speaker, under the 2018 JP Act, we have made Justices of the Peace responsible for any Justice of the Peace service across Jamaica. So you are now a JP for Jamaica, except when you serve in the lay magistrate courts, you have to serve in the parish in which you reside. So the seal now, Madam Speaker, speak of a Justice of the Peace of Jamaica, not of a parish. Madam Speaker, we want the citizens to be able to access JPs easily without having to go to anywhere. And that is why, Madam Speaker, we have now rolled out emails for all JPs. So every single JP now, Madam Speaker, can get an email at the Ministry of Justice, and the email is basically your first name dot last name at jp.gov.jm. At jp.gov.jm. And I urge all the JPs across Jamaica to make yourself available by really logging in to the email address so that the people of Jamaica can get access to you. Because, Madam Speaker, we have over 10,000 JPs. And if you look at your booklet, you will see on page 15 the number of JPs across each parish. Very nice. Very nice page to show you the number of JPs and the number of JPs who have been commissioned over the past year. Very nice color. Madam Speaker, the truth of the matter is that we have 10,000 JPs, but regrettably, less than 2,000 of them are really very active. So far too many JP means just profiling. We need JP to mean something that you are ensuring justice and that you are a peacemaker in your communities. And that is why, Madam Speaker, during the course of the last few years, we decided, the custodians and myself, to put together JP associations. And these JP associations, Madam Speaker, is to ensure that they can be in touch with all the JPs in their parish. And Madam Speaker, they're doing a fantastic job. Just Saturday night, Madam Speaker, I was invited to the awards ceremony and the first anniversary of the St. Catherine JP Association. They have a fantastic book. They gave awards to long-serving JPs who have served for 25 years and more. And Madam Speaker, this is being repeated right across all the parishes where the JP associations are pulling the JPs as they work together to bring justice across the parish, to be representative of the Ministry of Justice in all the alternate justice programs, to be information gatherers and information providers for the citizens. And that is what the JPs should be, Madam Speaker. They should be easily accessible to the citizens because citizens across Jamaica need information, and we not only sensitize, but we keep in touch with the JPs to provide them with relevant information that the citizens need. And so, Madam Speaker, the JP associations have been doing a fantastic job, and we hope they will continue to ensure that the quality of life in their communities will continue to improve. Madam Speaker, notary public, we have a 104 notary public. Last year, we appointed another 8, and we expect more to be appointed. Madam Speaker, expungement is an area that the Ministry of Justice comes under a lot of complaints, a lot of applications. Last year, we had 2,322 applications, and we approved 1,200. The truth, Madam Speaker, is when people apply, they expect that within days or weeks, it will be expunged. That is not how it works. When persons apply, Madam Speaker, the first thing that has to be done is that a report has to be requested from the Criminal Records Office. And because of the burden on the Criminal Records Office, Madam Speaker, the likelihood of getting back the Criminal Records report within 6 months is really very unlikely. The truth of the matter is, it is not a priority. Well, we are hoping that that will improve. And I know things are improving there because in the last few months, we have been getting more. But in the past, Madam Speaker, we have regularly over 2,000 requests to the CRO for records which have not been satisfied. But over the last few months, we have been getting back quite a few hundreds, and we're hoping that this will be expedited. Madam Speaker, I've been promising, and I have, to take a submission to Cabinet to look at a widening of the expungement jurisdiction. And the reason for this, Madam Speaker, we refuse a lot of applications. There are persons, Madam Speaker, who have been found guilty, yes, of serious crimes. But they haven't served their sentence 10 to 15 years. They have returned to the community. They have lived fairly upright life, 10, 15 years. And because the third schedule is quite restrictive, they cannot get expungement. And many of them, Madam Speaker, even though they appeal to the minister is reluctant to grant any appeal where the offense is of a serious nature, notwithstanding that they have been good, upright citizens for 10, 15 years. But, Madam Speaker, I hope during this fiscal year, to bring a bill to Parliament after we discuss it and it is approved at Cabinet, so we can widen the categories, or to ensure that persons who have been rehabilitated and have gone straight in their communities can get their matters expunged. Madam Speaker, marriage licenses is another area that the Ministry of Justice is involved with. Last year, we issued 8,313 licenses, and we provided the Minister of Finance or the Tax Administration in Jamaica with 33,252,000. We are doing well, Madam Speaker, but we don't mind more marriages so we can provide more more money to the Ministry of Finance.
That's not a way to look at it.
Right.
Stability.
No, but in truth, Madam Speaker, we enjoy when people come for their marriage license because it means that a family will be created, hopefully, or at least husband and wife. Madam Speaker, we have had people coming in now. We have to be clear and let it be clear. We do not support same-sex marriage as yet, or ever. The truth of the matter, people have been coming asking us for marriage license for two same-sex. This is, at the moment, is not permissible. Fine? But, Madam Speaker, we are able to say that 99.9% of the applications are dealt with within 24 hours. Where there is a problem is where there's a divorce. We have to wait and make sure that the divorce is not fraudulent, because we have had that problem before, Madam Speaker. So we check with the Supreme Court to ensure that the divorce is a valid one. Madam Speaker, the Justice Training Institute is doing a commendable job, not in training JPs, clerk of courts, and many other areas. And indeed, Madam Speaker, we are now on a program to train more stenographers and court reporters because, Madam Speaker, there's a shortage. So we will start very shortly to assist more persons to become steno writers and court reporters. Madam Speaker, the technology we intend to bring into the courts, we have spent a fair amount of money in the courts to improve the technological areas.
Minister, your time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, I ask for the Minister to be allowed 15 minutes to complete his presentation. Thank you.
Members, the question before the House is that the Minister be given an additional 15 minutes to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Minister, you have 15 minutes to wrap up.
Madam Speaker, may I emphasize, and then going through quickly so I don't abuse the time allotted, if we look in the Appendix 6, you will see a significant amount of work has been done. We have spent over 500 million to rehabilitate courts, and I'm happy to report, Madam Speaker, that the DPP now has first-class facilities. And she has so much space there, we might be able to appoint more prosecutors. Not only that, she has witness rooms, she has conference rooms, and so, Madam Speaker, that facility, like the Court of Appeal, is really first class. Madam Speaker, there's no doubt that we need new courts, and we are really using the public-private sector partnership, which unfortunately, Madam Speaker, is not moving as fast as I hope and expect. But I really hope, Madam Speaker, that this public-private sector partnership can be utilized so that we can have new parish courts. Madam Speaker, I move quickly, and you can see the expenditure in Appendix 7, the infrastructure. Significant amount of work has been done in the various courts. In truth, Madam Speaker, we want all the courts to be able to function without interruption, to be properly air-conditioned, and people can access and get justice in comfort. Madam Speaker, our legislative program is well on track. I would say that in respect to the various acts that we have done, they have assisted in improving various areas. But I just want to indicate, Madam Speaker, that a joint select committee has been set up to consider 3 pieces of legislation: the Offences Against a Person Act 2023, Criminal Justice Amendment Act 2023, and also the Child. And these matters, Madam Speaker, we hope for those persons who are complaining and and discussing on the air about mandatory minimum sentence for murder, we will give them the opportunity very shortly to appear before the Joint Select Committee to provide their comments and suggestions. Madam Speaker, during the course of the year, we hope to bring a mediation bill that will assist in definitely providing the framework for the expansion of mediation at a community level, in the courts, and commercially, so that Jamaica can be a mediation center for the Western Hemisphere. We signed on, Madam Speaker, to the Singapore Convention on Mediation. Singapore is now the mediation center for the Far East. We want Jamaica to be the mediation center for the West. And we hope to have that mediation act shortly. Madam Speaker, judgment debts, we have paid up. All the judgment debts for the last many years, we have paid up. This government, and I thank the Minister of Finance, providing enough funds that no litigant who has sued the government, settled the matter, and sent the documents or the claim to the Ministry of Justice, they are paid up within the hours or days. Madam Speaker, it is so good that last year, 530 million was paid out in judgment debt. And earlier, about January, I kept asking the Attorney General Chambers, you have any more claim? Because we have a little more money. And so, Madam Speaker, we had to return 150 million back to the Consolidated Fund. I am urging litigants who have sued the government, settle quickly with the Attorney General's chambers, so that we have money, we can assist you, settle, mediate, work with the Attorney General lawyers, settle your matter, and send the final claim to the Ministry of Justice so we can pay out. We don't want to send back any more money to the Consolidated Fund. We want justice for everybody. So once you claim and you have settled, we want to be able to pay you. It's the same, Madam Speaker, with all of the lawyers who have served as counsel in defense matters. No lawyer now who has served on a panel of in defense cases for the Legal Aid Council, no one can say they have not been paid within weeks. In other words, Madam Speaker, as soon as they serve as duty counsel, or as what they call legal aid lawyers, and they send in their claim, within weeks they are paid. Once the documents. And so, Madam Speaker, during the course of last year, we paid out $366 million to empaneled attorneys. And in a recent gang trial, Madam Speaker, so far we have paid $24 million. As soon as they send in their claim, we know that after they do the sentencing, we may have some more to pay. But the truth, Madam Speaker, thanks to the Minister of Finance, he has been very good to the Ministry of Justice, providing the funds so that people get their money. Madam Speaker, in trying to keep on time, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution has done a fantastic job, not only in prosecuting very serious cases, like the gang trial, but indeed, Madam Speaker, during the course of last year, they did 1122 cases when representing the Crown in criminal matters. Madam Speaker, the disposal rate averaged 95% based on the projections for the year. Madam Speaker, the DPP has now implemented a results-based management system and has managed to set turnaround performance within 24 to 48 hours for various instructions or advice. Madam Speaker, if I might say so, the DPP has succeeded in clearing up all the vintage cases. So the cases now are of recent vintage. Most of the others have been cleared up. The DPP has some of her major achievements: provided the Commercial Affairs Division, provided legal support for the Rio Cobre Water Treatment Plant, PPP, and, Madam Speaker, the various offices have worked closely with other agencies to ensure that matters that go to the High Court of Appeal or the Privy Council are properly dealt with. Again, Madam Speaker, if members look at the appendix, they will see additional work that was performed by the departments of the DPP and also by the Attorney General's chambers. Madam Speaker, I end my presentation with the courts. The courts, Madam Speaker, have done exceptionally well. Madam Speaker, today we are tabling six statistics, 3 each from the parish courts and from the Supreme Court. In truth, Madam Speaker, the courts have really performed and are improving in the delivery of justice. Madam Speaker, in the parish courts, they have not only reduced the backlog of cases, but 95%, Madam Speaker, of the cases are tried within 24 months, which means, Madam Speaker, that the backlog is less than 5%. Indeed, Madam Speaker, in some courts, there's no backlog. And I must say, Madam Speaker, that 90% of the cases are actually tried within 12 months. So the parish courts, Madam Speaker, they are now performing at world standard. And Madam Speaker, I want to encourage members to look at these statistical reports, not only members of Parliament, but any stakeholder. And the reason, Madam Speaker, is that these statistics have a wealth, a fountain of knowledge. And even if you only read the Chief Justice's summary or the executive summary, the members will gather important information to show how the courts are performing. When you see the parish courts, Madam Speaker, that on average for every 100 cases that come in, 125 cases are completed during the course of last year. It shows that the parish courts are performing above average. So this is in the criminal courts. In the Supreme Court, Madam Speaker, things have improved, but the clearance rate is still only at about 75%. But in the gun court, Madam Speaker, there's no backlog. All the cases in the gun courts are being tried within 24 months. And the average time for cases in the gun court is now 15 months. So those cases that came on under the new Firearms Act in November, about nearly over 300 cases, they're likely to be tried during the course of this year, early next year. But, Madam Speaker, where you can see great success is in the probate and divorce section. Madam Speaker, in the estate for 2022, the average time to dispose of an estate case is 1.5 or 18 months, 1.5 years or 18 months. The oldest case disposed of, Madam Speaker, in probate was 33 years. While the shortest time taken to dispose of a case was 2 months. A similar situation, Madam Speaker, pertains with family division of the Supreme Court, where the longest case disposed of in 2022 was again 33 years, while the shortest was 4 months. Madam Speaker, the truth of the matter is that attorneys must do better, with due respect to my colleagues, attorneys. If they pursue and prosecute the matters that they have sent to the Supreme Court and they file their documents correctly, the matters can be dealt with within weeks or months, as it is shown. Where if the documents are properly and correctly provided to the Supreme Court, they could get back their probate or divorce matters within a matter of 3 to 6 months. But because of requisitions, Madam Speaker, attorneys keep going back and forth, back and forth. So, Madam Speaker, we urge attorneys to ensure that these are dealt with. Madam Speaker, I must pay tribute to the Statistics Department of the Supreme Court, headed by Dr. Denarta Dennis. He has done a fantastic job in putting together the statistics. If you need any information in the courts and you call Dr. Donato Dennis, he's able to provide you within a matter of hours. And when you look at the reports, the 6 reports that I provide the Parliament with, and which will be on the House of Parliament website, where we'll be able to see how all the statistics, because, Madam Speaker, the Chief Justice, the Supreme Court, and the Ministry of Justice, we want to use data to be able to drive policy on how we spend our money. And this is important, and we thank the statistician. So, Madam Speaker, I can say without reservation that the courts, the justice system is on the right path. We haven't reached nirvanas yet, but we are working very closely to make sure that we have a first-class justice system. So, Madam Speaker, as I outlined to the court, the Ministry of Justice have made tremendous, significant strides in improving access to justice, providing justice services, and delivering justice to all. As I emphasize, Madam Speaker, Jamaicans can call 888 Justice or 888-587-8423 for justice-related information and to access any of the justice services. Madam Speaker, as we look to the future, there's still much more work to be done. We must continue to invest in the sector, both in terms of resources and personnel, to ensure that justice is delivered fairly and efficiently to all Jamaicans. We will move shortly, Madam Speaker, to a digitized, integrated case management platform to bring our justice system into the modern technological age. Technology, Madam Speaker, will be the main focus to drive efficiency and improvements. Madam Speaker, very shortly, we will have a team from Rwanda. We're in Rwanda, a poor country, Madam Speaker, that has a genocide. And they have in their system a paperless court system, paperless police operation, paperless correctional services, all of them integrated. And we want a similar system here, Madam Speaker, and I hope we can have it within the next 12 to 18 months. Madam Speaker, we must also remain vigilant in our efforts to uphold the rule of law, protect human rights, and promote social justice. I am confident, Madam Speaker, that this sectoral presentation will provide valuable insights into the progress, challenges, and future plans of the justice sector in Jamaica. I look forward, Madam Speaker, to realizing our vision for a stronger, more effective justice system that serves the needs of all Jamaicans as we join hands and hearts together in promoting justice for peace and harmony. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So, Madam Speaker, a great presentation from Minister Chuck. I ask now, Madam Speaker, for Minister Pearnel Charles, to make his presentation.
Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Pearnel Charles.
Madam Speaker, there is a lot to say about agriculture. And we certainly encourage the discussion from our many experts and those who have varying views on what is the best approach to achieve food security and where they think we may need adjustments in order to truly advance sustainability. What is important, Madam Speaker, is that there is definitely a burning interest in Jamaica from government, opposition, private sector, all of us, to see Jamaica's agricultural sector flourish and unlock its potential. This is our collective goal. So today, Madam Speaker, colleagues, we will examine the major issues, challenges, and the way forward with a reflection on our strategic priorities, our plans, programs, partnerships, policies undertaken by the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries and its agencies. We will identify and explore for you the Grow Smart, Eat Smart strategy, this formula that requires us as a country to adjust a more empirical and business-like operation so that we can increase production, improve efficiency, and ultimately, Madam Speaker, drive wealth creation through investment in agriculture and fisheries. Permit me to start by giving thanks to the Almighty for His continued blessings and guidance, which has allowed me to successfully navigate this multifaceted portfolio. May my steps and those who work with me continue to be ordered through His will. Madam Speaker, to our fearless leader, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, my deep gratitude for your continued confidence in my leadership within this crucial portfolio as we work to strengthen our nation's food security. To my wife, children, and my family, including the Chief who is here with us today, my sister, Dr. Mikael Charles, who sits with me in Parliament, and my siblings and cousins, all who are in attendance, to whom I'm eternally indebted for your unwavering support as I perform my duties as Minister and Member of Parliament for the West constituency in Jamaica, South East Clarendon. Thank you for your sacrifices, your patience, and your understanding. Madam Speaker, I am blessed with a wise and experienced Minister of State in the Honorable Franklin Witter. Frank, we make a good team, and together we will continue to lead the agricultural revolution for Jamaica. Madam Speaker, I must also convey my sincere thanks and appreciation to Permanent Secretary Dermot Spence, my Chief Technical Directors, the senior management and staff of the Ministry and agencies, our board chairpersons and members within the remit of the Ministry, all who have worked tirelessly to achieve the continued growth and expansion of our sector. We thank you all. To my fellow ministers, colleagues in Parliament, staff, and all of those from the several agencies who provide support to the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, let me express my gratitude as we work together as one government to achieve our goal of realizing Vision 2030. Madam Speaker, a big thank you to my vibrant and diligent office and constituency teams who are here today in the gallery, as well as my councillors, including our mayor, caretakers, workers and supporters, without whom, Madam Speaker, I certainly would not be here today. Madam Speaker, they have stuck by me through thick and thin, and together I am confident that we will continue to advance the goals of the ministry and to build Southeast Clarendon into a model constituency. And I remain committed to you, to providing the best representation I can and giving my all to ensure a better future for the next generation. Madam Speaker, partnership is key. And so we must also acknowledge our local, regional, international partners, including the Jamaica Agricultural Society, and other sector groups, farming organizations, our purveyors and investors who stepped up recently to help resolve some issues in St. Thomas and otherwise. All of you who are committed to supporting our programs and initiatives as we work towards improving and expanding agriculture and fisheries for Jamaica. There is no problem that we cannot solve together, and we have proven that. Madam Speaker, from Westmoreland to St. Thomas, it is our farmers and fishers that we depend on to feed this nation. These are not easy professions, but they are certainly honorable ones. And so today, we thank the providers of our nation's food and sustenance for pushing through the trying times and continuing to nourish us with your hard work, dedication, and resilience. We, as a country, stand by you and salute you for your efforts to build a better Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the debate around agriculture is live, and so we must examine it from several angles. So today, we will look on it from the foundation up. From irrigation, clean soil, clean seedlings, to the use of the grow smart operations to lead to better production and productivity, to the need for expanding storage facilities, and to the much expansive and well-needed marketing to deliver our value-added products to the world, to more exports and less dependency on imports. All of this, Madam Speaker, with an understanding that more investments in agriculture will result in wealth creation for our nation. That's right. Madam Speaker, there's so much taking place. I would need the entire 12 hours. And since I don't have that, we have understood the need to communicate to our farmers and to our colleagues. And the ministry has provided for your reference. Firstly, an annual performance report has been tabled. Secondly, we have provided a How We Serve You book, which details the delivery of service to our farmers, highlighting the benefits you can have as a farmer and simplifying for you how you can access those benefits. We have also provided, Madam Speaker, a document of our projects and our programs, and it is detailed, Madam Speaker, and I would encourage colleagues to go through all of the 23 projects that are listed, from small ruminant development program all the way down to the improvement in our offshore radio communication for fisheries. Madam Speaker, we also have a booklet on the support, particularly to small farmers, through the Production Incentive Program. And that is here also detailing what the program is and the support that we are giving and how to our farmers. Madam Speaker, soon we will also launch, in addition to those booklets, the Financing for Agribusinesses Guide, assisting our farmers and investors in terms of access to finance, one of the great challenges that we've had in the agricultural sector. So, Madam Speaker, I know that there will be those who will say that we perhaps have not mentioned a sector player or two, but everyone is mentioned in the documents as referenced. And we are enhancing how we communicate. So some of this information as well, Madam Speaker, will be also translated into audio-visual format to assist those persons who absorb information more adequately by listening and seeing on the TV. Madam Speaker, this is what we speak about when we say growing smart and eating smart, because ultimately we want to have access for all of our farmers and investors, and we want a sector that is constructive and productive and really reflects what we think and know Jamaica can be. Madam Speaker, we can say to Jamaica that this government, led by Andrew Holness, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, is serious about agriculture and fisheries. And this is evident. This is evident, Madam Speaker, in our decisions and in our actions, such as making the largest capital investment in irrigation ever, more than $10.6 billion. It is evident in our expansion of research and development capacity to improve planting material and advance soil fertility mappings. It is evident, Madam Speaker, in the introduction of technological innovation like our breeding hatchery that will increase our fisheries production by multiples when it comes on stream. And also, Madam Speaker, by the improvement in resilience of our local goats and sheep through the small ruminant program. Too many times, the discussion on agriculture and fisheries focuses on opinions and not facts. And so today, for those who may have received some skewed perception based on what you heard, let's listen to some facts. This sector accounts for more than 250,000 registered farmers and fishers, Madam Speaker, and continues to be the largest goods-producing employer of labor in Jamaica. And we have seen an increase of 1.6% in terms of employment from 21 to 22. Agriculture and fisheries, Madam Speaker, contributed 7.3% to our GDP in 2022. And we experienced unprecedented growth, setting new records in production with a historic 7 consecutive quarters of growth. And for the first time, in terms of domestic crop production, surpassing 800,000 tons, with 846,508 tons of production of our domestic crops. Madam Speaker, so when they talk about agriculture, remind Jamaica that we have seen a 9.9% increase from 21 to 22 during the most challenging times in our country. Madam Speaker, at the heart of these positive trends is the commitment of a team that I have come so much to respect. My team, Madam Speaker, the government, and in particular, the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, led by our Permanent Secretary, Professor Dermot Spence, and our agencies. Give him a clap. Who are working hard to support our farmers and fishers. We have titled him such. When you sit in the room and listen, you understand why we call him Professor, Madam Speaker. They are dedicated, from senior staff all the way down, to ensuring that our nation remains competitive and sustainable in a rapidly changing world. And they are working tirelessly to create a brighter future for all those who depend on the land and sea for their livelihoods. Madam Speaker, let's get right into it. We said from the foundation up, and the foundation starts with irrigation. And Madam Speaker, the Essex Valley Agricultural Development Project and the Southern Plains Agricultural Development Project are the largest infrastructure programs ever undertaken in the history of this ministry. Madam Speaker, when I say we are serious about wealth creation and investment in the sector, this is a prime example of put your money where your mouth there. Madam Speaker, this year we will be expending an estimated $6.8 billion to cover irrigation infrastructure, farm roads, drains, and support for post-harvest agro-processing facilities in those areas. These projects are projected to impact 3,840 acres of land in our high production zones, Madam Speaker. And this is just the start, as we have now commenced preliminary work on the Pedro Plains project, which is projected to impact 10,127 acres of land, Madam Speaker. And I know my good friends in St. Elizabeth certainly appreciate that. Madam Speaker, we have commenced pre-planning activities to expand irrigation services in the Pedro Plains, utilizing surface flows from the Black River at Lacovia. The project, when implemented, will impact at least 4,000 farm families. 4,000. Massive. Madam Speaker, for 2022, the NIC, National Irrigation Commission, led by Mr. Giles, was able to complete the preliminary engineering designs and contracting of the cadastral survey and titling at a cost of $252 million. The key activities targeted for the financial year are the commencement of ownership mapping of 14,000 parcels, delivery of 1,000 titles, and the acquisition of 4 parcels for irrigation infrastructure. This is impact, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, additionally, Essex Valley, SPAD, Pedro Plains, and much more, we are developing more new irrigation systems to impact some of our most important production zones. Let me tell you a few. Madam Speaker, the Yallast, West St. Thomas, Lucky Hill Pen in St. Mary, Hinestown in St. Anne, Lennox Lowleton in Portland, and Holland in St. Elizabeth. This represents over 19,000 acres of new irrigation developments across these production zones. Madam Speaker, we are currently at 38,556 hectares, or, put it in acres, 95,233 acres of land already commissioned in irrigation. And this represents a 55% of the lands that we have targeted for near to medium term irrigation coverage. This means, Madam Speaker, colleagues, that we are well on our way, and that the remaining 45%, we are constantly developing new projects and seeking funding to execute those at the earliest. Our goal, our long-term vision for Jamaica must be to utilize every inch of irrigable land to increase production, and to do so by improving productivity. We're not only expanding, we're becoming more efficient. And when you couple expansion and efficiency, it's grow smart, eat smart. Madam Speaker, the NIC has also been exemplary in its commitment to environmental stewardship in the face of climate change and the integration of renewable energy into its portfolio. We have installed solar in 3 of our offices, 5 pumping stations, Madam Speaker, Beacon E, Little Park and F3 in St. Elizabeth, Bengal Station in Trelawney, and Ebony Park in Clarendon. Madam Speaker, this represents approximately 1 megawatt of solar energy. And if I can do the analysis, but I believe the NIC now is one of, if not the top agency in terms of really answering the call in terms of introducing renewable into Jamaica. Madam Speaker, this will reduce water production cost, and this reduction in water production cost will translate into more efficient and reliable service from NIC to our customers. From these interventions, colleagues, we have saved $140 million so far and counting. Madam Speaker, drought mitigation. I won't go too much into it because we have discussed it in the Parliament, but we continue to pond liners, black tanks, drip irrigation kits. We continue to support our farmers, like our senior farmer from St. Elizabeth, who through water harvesting and the implementation of support from RADA and the ministry was able to plow through and produce at the same or more even during the drought. Madam Speaker, we have acquired 1 water truck, and we can announce that we will be acquiring 3 more water trucks. Madam Speaker, let me move on. Foundation up. Let's talk about land. The AIC has stepped up the distribution of leases. 47 leases so far and that includes 15 females for this year. And we continue to the effort in aggressively bringing into our coffers agricultural lands, whether it be private or public, wherever it exists in the country. And through collaboration, Madam Speaker, with the HAJ, NHT, and the SC, the sugar company, we have commenced the favorable exchange of good agricultural land to the ministry. While we have no issue giving up marginal lands that we have no intention to use. And this is a directive in terms of greater efficiency across government. We have also, Madam Speaker, an agricultural land use policy currently being developed that complements the national land use policy. And in collaboration with the Land Utilization Committee, the ministry is ensuring the preservation, access, and utilization of agricultural lands in the most efficient and effective manner. This is going to guarantee that there is a bank of good agricultural land available to potential investors in their various agricultural pursuits. Madam Speaker, since we're talking about land, let me announce today some big steps in terms of land preparation for our farmers. Madam Speaker, we continue to support our farmers, and we will be targeting 60 farmers this year to receive support at no cost for the preparation of their 1 acre of agricultural land, increasing that incentive from last year. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the farmer will have the option, if they so choose, to utilize this support for land clearing of the same acreage. This, Madam Speaker, reaffirms our commitment to our small farmers, and there's much more to come. Madam Speaker, when we talk about water and talk about land, it is important for us to also examine the soil and its fertility, and the seedlings and the quality of planting material that we use. Within the context, then, of examining soil, the government has embarked, Madam Speaker, on a project with our friends from the Kingdom of Morocco. We want to thank them for that support. But similarly, we are now engaged in the process of going across the island and doing our soil fertility mapping. Farmers under this program, Madam Speaker, will be equipped, hear me now, with soil analysis kits, which will enable them, before they point or put one root in the ground, to get a reading of the constituency of the soil. With Clean Seed Project going into clean soil, we will see robust production. Grow smart. Madam Speaker, in recognition that nothing can come from the soil without quality planting material, we have also developed a policy to ensure that Jamaica is at the forefront of managing the quality of our planting material and recognizing the need to preserve and continually develop for the resilience of our crop production. Madam Speaker, our research stations are focused on developing cleaner seedlings. And recently in St. Anne, I was discussing with one of our colleagues from Bodles the 15 varieties of cassava and the work that they are doing in terms of clean seedlings. So irrigation, clean soils, clean seedlings are all components of successful agriculture. So too is the labor and the training required for those who will till the soil. And we'll talk about that soon. Madam Speaker, let me just indicate that the seed policy has been approved and is being implemented. And in support of the same, we have designed that infrastructure at Bodles. The Seed Germplasm Bank has been established. And that's a bank. It's like a bank, but it's like a bank for seeds and not money. And we have signed, Madam Speaker, onto several international programs that facilitate the exchange and storage of planting material for preservation and resilience. And we're also signatory to the International Treaty for Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. I take the time, Madam Speaker, colleagues, to deal with the issues of irrigation, of our soil, and our seedlings, planting material, because these are some of the issues to which several opinions are promulgated on a daily and weekly basis. And I'm hoping that those opinions will now apply the facts. Madam Speaker, the sector is growing and the opportunities for further investment are clear. But labor is a limitation if it is not properly managed. And so we applaud our training institutions that continue to focus on agricultural education at levels from primary straight up. We are working with the Budding Farmers Group and we'll continue and expand that work to stimulate interest at an early stage from 3 years old up, Madam Speaker, or even before. With the secondary level, our Jamaica Dairy Development Board is investing heavily to provide schools across the country with a focus on their livestock development programs. And we are supporting and continue to support tertiary institutions like CASE, who has recently launched their new tissue culture lab, as well as advancing aquaponics and hydroponics and seed multiplication systems. All of this taking place right here in Jamaica, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as we focus on labor and focus on training, we remind ourselves that the Prime Minister recently announced that there is a removal of any barrier in terms of fees for HEART programs, many of which relate to agriculture. And we hope and we call on students who are interested in agriculture to go and take up these opportunities. Madam Speaker, as we talk about the youth, let us just touch on the 4-H Club. We applaud the 4-H Club, Madam Speaker, who has provided a strategic focus for youth in agriculture. And we note the significant research work that is done in collaboration with our tertiary institutions such as CASE and NCU and others who have partnered with our research facilities in areas like livestock, crops, and soil. And these provide opportunities for our youth in terms of internships and otherwise to be exposed so they can become the next generation of leaders in agriculture. In realizing their mandate, Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to report that the Jamaica 4-H Club achievements include their Youth Agricultural Entrepreneurship Program, REAP, where they have trained more than 750. Well, targeting 750, moving up towards training those. 845, were trained, exceeding the 750 target. And some of those, Madam Speaker, particularly have been trained in agro-enterprises in areas such as apiculture, in pig and goat rearing, broiler and crop production, all of these areas in agriculture that we are introducing to our youth. The ministry has provided support in more than $5 million for that. Madam Speaker, the 4-H also established the Youth in Fisheries program in collaboration, Madam Speaker, with InMed Caribbean Partnership for Children. Our 4-H Club was able to establish one of the largest commercial aquaponics systems in Jamaica with a potential capacity of 5,000 tilapia fish, 5,000 pounds of vegetables, all in a 1,000 square foot grow space. Madam Speaker, this is purposeful introduction to our youth. We also have the establishment, Madam Speaker, through these programs of climate-smart agriculture and climate-resilient climate action programs and initiatives for our youth. Some of these also relate, Madam Speaker, to the Engender Project, where we ensure that we have that balance in terms of males and females and the exposure that we give to both. Madam Speaker, we have seen we are 891 youth participants, 415 males, and 476 females were trained in climate-smart agriculture, sustainable fisheries practices, and adaptive technologies. Madam Speaker, the 4-H Club also in collaboration with HEART has certified some of our youth farmers in areas of poultry and livestock attendant, vegetable crop production, nursery attendant, propagation specialist, and we are calling for more. We have the tractor operation and maintenance training program, and we have other programs that we call on our youth to take up. Madam Speaker, as I close this section, we importantly have provided 262 scholarships and bursaries to our youth. Recipients of these scholarships and grants are currently attending Case, UWI, Knox, Nokalvok Polytechnic, and other institutions. And we hope to do more. Madam Speaker, we have also assisted, and we continue to assist some of our youngsters to get global experience. Some of them are in Costa Rica now at the Earth University, and we hope that we can ramp up that support to ensure that more can get this global exposure. Madam Speaker, we are working with the Jamaica Agricultural Society. And before I came here, I had a conversation with their president, Mr. Fulton. And I want to especially acknowledge the JAS and thank them across the parishes for the work. And we're committed to ensuring that we have a stronger communication and relationship. And I know that together we will be meeting with organizations such as the Egg Farmers Association, and I know of the present marketing challenges that you are facing. The Pig Farmers Association, Beef Farmers Association, Coffee Growers Association, Citrus Farmers Association. All of these groups that we will be working together, partnering to make sure that we can provide with the greatest support. So, Madam Speaker, from the foundation up, irrigation, clean soil, clean seeds, the support through labor and training, our youth, our partnerships. Now we're going to talk about production. Madam Speaker, we are impacting our small farmers in big ways. With a strong foundation and farmers on the ground, it is important for us to have a focus on incentivizing and supporting these important farmers and fishers. Madam Speaker, we recognize that there are challenges. Fertilizer and feed being two of the greatest challenges in terms of cost, high input costs that affect production and therefore affect ability to expand. Madam Speaker, I want to refer to the documents that we had here, but to use the opportunity today, as we speak about fertilizer and feed, to make a massive announcement. Madam Speaker, we have been working with our partners, relying on them, speaking to them, supporting them, all as one collective, pushing towards the goal of a better agricultural sector. Madam Speaker, throughout the last year, we have seen where farmers have cried out for the cost of fertilizer. We were able to provide them with support received in our partnership with Morocco, and we thank them for that support and look forward to more. But right here in Jamaica, Madam Speaker, we have companies like Newport Firsan, who was able to give us support and give the country assurances that when the world saw fertilizer prices rising, we saw reductions in fertilizer price. But we know that it's still not enough. And so we continue to do what we can to give more to our farmers. But today, Madam Speaker, in the gallery is Mr. Dennis Valdez, the Managing Director, and I want to acknowledge our Managing Director from Newport Firsan, one of our companies, who I believe has permitted me to indicate to Jamaica that effective tomorrow, we can announce a 22% reduction for all granule fertilizers. And I remind you, Madam Speaker, I'm happy that I heard my colleague, because I don't shy from the facts. But let us remind Jamaica that when prices were going up, Newport for Sun and other stakeholders in Jamaica were holding down prices and getting them down. Madam Speaker, there's no politics in agriculture.
That's right. So thank you, ma'am.
There are policies, programs, plans, and the other big P is partnership. And I want all Jamaican companies to know that this minister values them. You'll never hear me say, that's just because everywhere else is going down. You didn't have to, but you did. And we respect that, and we must do so. Madam Speaker, in addition to that, we as a government are committed to our farmers. And we're committed to assisting them not only with fertilizer, but with the preparation of their land in the right way. And so we will ramp up our support in terms of technical support. And also, we can announce today that we are committed to preparing the land and providing high-quality protein planting material for up to half an acre whenever we can find the farmers that put themselves in clusters across the island. St. Thomas, St. Mary, St. Catherine, Westmoreland, Portmore, everywhere. Madam Speaker, this government is serious about agriculture. Madam Speaker, I don't have the time to go through all the details, so I provided you with the details. But let me just move on quickly. As we speak about fertilizer, we speak about feed. And I want you to know that that support is going to allow for them to be able to increase their fodder banks so we can provide local feed for our animals in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, we also respect and acknowledge the need for more organics. And at this point, let me just indicate, we want to call on our farmers to reach out to us if you need support in terms of application of pesticides and other things. So we're seeing some trends, and I've spoken to farmers when I'm on the ground, and I have a concern in relation to that. And we're going to roll out a program to make sure that the pesticides are being applied in the right way and that we can explore the use of more organics in our country. Madam Speaker, we are exploring organic fertilizer. And we can announce that RADA has partnered and is moving to establish a $30 million pilot project for composting and organic fertilizer production on several farms across the island. Madam Speaker, farmers will be trained and the fertilizer will be used on the pilot farms and then distributed to other farms as production increases. Similarly, we will work with the two established organic fertilizer producers to ramp up production as we provide an environmentally friendly alternative to the inorganic fertilizers. Madam Speaker, we're moving through, breezing through. We're going to discuss farm roads. Madam Speaker, our farm road program has rehabilitated more than 55 roads across the country. Total kilometer of rehabilitated roads is 30,325. The impact of this rehabilitation has been felt across the board. Coffee farmers have benefited from the Borax Spring to Bangor Ridge rehabilitation works in Portland, and they are able now, Madam Speaker, to drive their vehicles closer to the farm gate, making it easier to transport produce from farm to market and farm inputs to their farm. Vegetable farmers along the Ebankstown in St. Elizabeth, because of the road, They are not only paying a lower cost to have water delivered to their farms, but are now able to receive water directly at farm gate, thereby increasing access to water and increasing farm productivity. Madam Speaker, the Farm Roads Rehabilitation Program has created synergies with the Frosty Pod Rot Control Project by rehabilitating the Hampstead Road in St. Mary, facilitating cocoa farmers and small women and farmers to better access farms for transporting inputs and workers to the farms. Madam Speaker, the details are in the documents. But we have several parishes: St. Anne, St. Catherine, Clarendon, Manchester, St. Elizabeth, 6 roads, St. James, 5 roads, St. Westmoreland, 4 roads, and across the country. Madam Speaker, we're in the middle of the tree. We dealt with the roots, we're in the trunk. And we're going to move from agriculture to fisheries. With respect to the fisheries industry, I want to remind this Honourable House of the reasons for this industry being regarded as critical to the Jamaican blue economy. Fisheries contributes to the livelihood of over 200,000 Jamaicans, contributing more than $10 billion to the GDP, while earning export income of over 14 million US. Madam Speaker, there was an increase in aquaculture production year over year, with production moving from 869 metric tons to 949, representing a 9% growth in last year. We're not satisfied. This growth needs to be bolstered. And so we have spent $13.2 million on a quarantine facility to enable the importation of broodstock for both shrimp and tilapia. Madam Speaker, we have $450 million worth of investment now being spent for the creation of the climate-smart recirculating aquaculture system hatchery, with a potential to produce 5 million fry, not fries, fry, the little fish, by 2025, and increasing, no, not small fry, and increasing fish production up to 3,400 metric tons. Madam Speaker, who is questioning if this government is serious about agriculture? Madam Speaker, to facilitate this production, we have removed the CET from fish and shrimp feed. And let me thank our Minister of Finance and Public Service for being so supportive. Because today, we can announce that that will be extended in terms of that removal. Madam Speaker, I want to also announce, since we're in the spirit of happiness, that for the first 50 new acres of fish ponds established this year, we will provide 15,000 fry per acre free of cost per farmer. Madam Speaker, we are serious about agriculture and fisheries. And I want the country to remember these announcements and plans and programs, so when others come with their opinions, you pull for the facts. Madam Speaker, at the same time, we are encouraging mariculture production. And for my brother Fitz, who asked me a while ago, what is mariculture? Is it the same as aquaculture? It's not aquaculture fish. It is using the nets out in the sea. So we're encouraging mariculture production by renovating the Bowden facility in St. Thomas to increase the production of oysters and sea moss to develop these two emerging subsectors. And I know my Minister of State indicated he's very interested in the sea moss aspect of that subsector. Parallel to this infrastructure, we have provided support in the form of 2 boats and 2 engines to enable the 2 fishing communities in Savannah Lamar, Westmoreland, and Green Island, Hanover, to establish oyster farms, as well as providing training and capacity building in production techniques and management. This government is serious about agriculture and fisheries. Madam Speaker, for sustainability now, talking about capture fisheries, for sustainability in the marine sector, the National Fisheries Authority, led by Dr. Bellamy, and the Ministry and other partners will be establishing 2 new fish sanctuaries this year, bringing to the...
The Minister's time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the Minister be given 15 minutes to complete his presentation.
Members, the question before the House is that the Minister be given 15 minutes to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
I thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, let me jump quickly just to indicate that we announce again 2 new fish sanctuaries will be brought on board this year, bringing to the number 20, with a sanctuary cover now of 10,498 hectares. Madam Speaker, I know that when we say this, some may ask, what's the importance? But it is critical, because of the fish sanctuaries, we are able to sustain and maintain the quantities and the quality, and to protect where necessary. While encouraging our fishers to reduce the stress on our reefs, the NFA, in collaboration with CMU and UWI, have been providing training for small boat handling, safety at sea, and safe diving practices to equip our fishers to exploit the underutilized pelagic fishing. Madam Speaker, let me move. I'll leave that for you to read. We are focused on increasing production. And I'm going to move swiftly into small ruminants, where we as a government are focused on a rapid multiplication of small ruminants through artificial insemination, embryo transfer, and other research and development techniques. During 2022 to 2023 period, interventions to small ruminant industry and broiler production were undertaken at the value of $80 million. Most recently, Madam Speaker, you'd have seen that we imported some of the 200 small ruminants taken from the U.S. to help improve our local herd here in Jamaica. 50 of these animals arrived last month during Farmers' Month, and we salute them. Madam Speaker, the importation of these animals and proper breeding management is critical for maintaining production and sustaining the industry. We look on the genetics as much as we look on the nutrition. It's not one or the other, it's both. But overall, Madam Speaker, the Small Ruminant Program is a critical initiative to drive wealth creation by improving productivity, profitability, and sustainability, and a reach for more farmers in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, this is also promoting better nutrition and helping us to achieve food security. Madam Speaker, I know the challenges that some of the farmers face. I was a victim myself of predatory larceny. I wasn't stolen, I was the owner of the goats. I saw Phillips looking at me like I was saying I was taken from the herd. But Madam Speaker, we appreciate the great loss that some of the farmers have experienced, and we can't do everything for all, but we want to announce, since we are in the spirit of happiness, that we are going to be selecting 6 of our youth farmers who have experienced loss. And those 6 farmers will be supported by the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, who will provide goats from our program to get them back on track. And we're going to present this, Madam Speaker, on May 12th at our 4-H Achievement Day. Madam Speaker, note that COVID-19 has had a profound impact on the global food system, disrupting us. And so, as we talk about small ruminants, we also note the importance of poultry farming and how several farmers relied on the poultry program, particularly throughout COVID-19. We have provided support and will continue to provide support in terms of broiler chicks, tanks, rations, and technical support to farmers. And Madam Speaker, I just want to, as we close off this, section say very quickly that the ministry, in addition to the support of the goats to our youth farmers, the ministry will distribute 25 small ruminant chafing machines in a bid to enhance the development of alternate feeding for small ruminants. Similarly, we are also in the process, Madam Speaker, of importing 2 industrial feed pelletizers to enhance ration formulation for small ruminants and cattle. Madam Speaker, we do this because we acknowledge the high cost of feed, and we are moving towards our longer-term vision of sufficiency. This is important help to the farmers, and we will continue to give this. Madam Speaker, I crave your indulgence. For Prayer larceny, I just want to quickly assure the country that we have a very deliberate strategy to frontally attack prayer larceny. We are completed now with the submission that I spoke about some weeks or months ago. And that submission has been sent off to Cabinet around the agricultural wardens and the other structure for the new prayer larceny authority, the comprehensive approach rather, that is sent off to Cabinet for approval. Madam Speaker, we also note that 30 farmer watch groups were established this year. We had 142 arrests that were made relating to breaches of legislation, and 52 prayer larceny related offenses were reported officially over the period. Madam Speaker, we have a lot of work to do when it comes down to this challenge, and I just want to assure the country that this is a priority. Not everything done can be said, but be assured that things are being done. We have trained our police and will continue to train them. We had 9 training sessions conducted by JCF personnel across all 19 geographical police divisions. 440 police personnel were trained on how to effectively investigate prayer larceny cases and prepare case files. A total of 58 public education initiatives are completed. 130 farmers have been sensitized during a series of sensitization sessions island-wide, Madam Speaker. And we had 8 episodes of support and partnership with our radio programs only focused on prayer larceny. 150 prayer larceny prevention enforcement guides have been disseminated and many more to come. Madam Speaker, let me just close this section by saying this is not a national security issue only. When somebody comes into your farm and steals your produce, they don't know if you sprayed it the night before. When somebody steals your cattle, steal your goat, they don't know at what stage of readiness it is to be consumed. They don't care. So it is a public health issue, Madam Speaker. And we recognize it as such and call on the country, every MP, every minister, every senator, everyone in Jamaica, to get on board in resolving this scourge of prayer larceny. Madam Speaker, I want to swiftly move through in terms of insurance for agriculture. And in our ongoing efforts to build the resilience of the agricultural sector to the climate change-related stresses, we can announce that the GK General Insurance Weather Protect is now offering a new type of micro-insurance. It is a trigger-based insurance policy designed to help non-salary income earners to cope with the impacts of extreme weather events. Massive, Madam Speaker. Payout is based on the weather index. And once the trigger value is reached, the payroll will be triggered automatically. Additionally, Madam Speaker, other products available for life and health insurance are in the Agricare plan and the Sagicor also Agricare plan for farmers and fishers. Madam Speaker, there is now available also the Advantage General Farmers and Fisherfolk motor and home bundled insurance package. And this is the first time where insurance is being made available for fishing vessels. Massive. I love it. We are growing the sector, Madam Speaker, and we are instituting smart programs, initiatives, and resources to bolster and safeguard the livelihoods of our farmers. Madam Speaker, I know the time is running down. So I would deal with exports, I would deal with imports, but I'm going to leave that and move to what's even more important. Madam Speaker, for us to have more export, we must have more storage capacity. And I want to encourage investors, as we, the government, are investing in expanding storage capacity, cold chain facilities, drying facilities, chilled facilities. We are producing more in Jamaica, and we will continue to produce more. And when we produce during the good times, we must save and store for the lower times. Madam Speaker, the ministry is looking to rehabilitate the Collierville cold storage facility in Christiana, Manchester to accommodate local harvest of onions, potatoes, and other perishable crops. And we are looking at storage for commodities that rely on the drying facilities. All of this, we encourage and call on additional investment. This is critical, Madam Speaker, to our value-added focus. If we're going to expand the value chain, if we're going to have niche products to sell at higher revenue for our farmers, we need expanded and expansive storage capacity. Madam Speaker, yes, and we do. And we must also highlight and salute those who have made that investment already and who continue to do so, our purveyors, our entrepreneurs, and we do thank you for your investment. Madam Speaker, agriculture is our wisest pursuit because it will in the end contribute the most to real wealth, good morals, and happiness. Madam Speaker, I want to assure you that the future of farming in Jamaica is bright. Future will see us advancing precision agriculture, developing a national food reserve to ensure continued food security during times of crisis, expanding into agro-ecotourism to diversify our agricultural reach, and applying advanced technologies. High-density agriculture is our focus, and also enhancing controlled environment for higher productivity and consistency. Madam Speaker, we are going to grow smart so we can eat smart. Madam Speaker, I want to call on all of us to help to build the framework and ecosystems that enable growth and development. And we as a government, we are committed to this sector. The government is serious about agriculture and fisheries. Madam Speaker, in conclusion, an investment in agriculture and fisheries presents significant opportunities for wealth creation, significant opportunities for economic sustainable growth. With the sector's potential for growth and the government's commitment to its development and with our support of partners, now is the time. Now is the time for investors to explore the opportunities available and contribute to the sustainable development of our sector. I want to call on investors to see, for instance, our import bill not as a challenge only, but as an opportunity. It designs for you empirically what the demand is. Go after it. We will support you step by step. Madam Speaker, agriculture is the greatest and fundamentally the most important of our industries. The cities are but the branches of the tree of national life, the roots of which go deeply into the land. We all flourish or decline with the farmer. Let me close as I began with an understanding, Madam Speaker, that our steps must be ordered by the Almighty if we are to be successful and impactful. So, Lord, may any attempt to divide us make us stronger. May any attempt to distract us make us more focused. And may we continuously be strengthened through your will and receive the wisdom to think and act in the interest of the nation that we serve, as we together develop and protect our land and sea. Madam Speaker, I thank you. One love.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the Honorable Pearnel Charles for his impactful presentation, and now ask you to invite Mr. Mikael Phillips, Member of Parliament, Manchester North West, to make his presentation.
I know you can't help yourself.
Member from now.
Madam Speaker, today I make my 7th contribution to these annual sectoral debates. In my capacity as opposition spokesman on transport and works. These are extremely important portfolio subjects in modernizing the country's infrastructure and economy. I begin, as always, with the wisdom of Isaiah, who advised us in chapter 12, verse 4. Give thanks to the Lord. Call on his name. Make known his deeds among the peoples, for he has done glorious things. So I thank the Lord for his blessings to his people and I over the last year. We are emerging from rough times indeed, Madam Speaker. I thank my constituents of Northwest Manchester for their continued support, especially my councillors, my secretary, Latoya, my driver, Aldin, who has been with me for 13 years, the executive of Northwest Manchester, and other members of my team. Madam Speaker, I also want to recognize students from the Mile Gully High School, which is the only high school in Northwest Manchester. I see other family members in the gallery. Madam Speaker, when things get rough, I remember the words of Dennis Brown. Do you know what it means to have a revolution and what it takes to make a solution? I also thank you, Madam Speaker, for your leadership, the clerks of the House, the staff of the House of Parliament, colleagues on both sides. Colleagues on both sides. In his absence, I want to thank the Leader of the Opposition, who continues to perform his duties with high level of wisdom and integrity. I affirm my readiness for the task of rescuing Jamaica. Madam Speaker, my family has been a continued source of strength, guidance, and inspiration for me. This year marks 5 years since my mother, Mikael Phillips, also called Sister Minnie, passed. Her continued contribution to the Rastafarian faith and the Pan-African movement will transcend generations. We continue to miss you, Mommy. I also want to thank my mother, Sandra, who is a rock of our family. Madam Speaker, I am the only sitting member of Parliament who continues to benefit from the presence of a parent, my father, sitting in the House at the same time. Outside of Michael and Norma and Manley, we have Pearnel Charles Jr. and Sr. We are the longest serving father-son in the Parliament. I appreciate the generosity of his advice and support. And to my daughters, who have been there with me every step of the journey. Love you, Isabel and Gabriella. And my wash belly celebrates her 18th birthday this Friday. Happy birthday when it comes, Gabriella. Wash belly. Madam Speaker, the World Bank says roads are the arteries through the economy pulses. By linking producers to markets, workers to jobs, students to school, and the sick to hospitals. Roads are vital to any developmental agenda. I will explore how Jamaica is doing on what we will need to ensure that our infrastructure development and maintenance remain front and center, and indeed the backbone of our goal to make Jamaica the place to live, work, do business, and raise families. Madam Speaker, I have reviewed the presentations made by the portfolio's 4 ministers since 2016. I've also looked back at my own presentations and the comments and recommendations made in the period. It seems this administration forgets it has been in office for 11 of the last 15 years. These has not been meaningful advances. I have to say, Madam Speaker, that infrastructure and public transport have been treated as a bastard child of the Jamaican economy instead of the arches through which the economy pulses. There is no transport policy and plan. Remember, you were there once. Little investment and little or no maintenance of our road infrastructure and public transport system. Transport contributes about 4% of the GDP of the economy. The basket of goods and services used by Statin to measure movements in the Consumer Price Index weighs transport at 11.2% of total consumption. It is the second largest component of the CPI. Transport is not only about the movement of people and goods. It also contributes significantly to the country's productivity and quality of life. It begs the question, Madam Speaker, what is the vision of public transport, road infrastructure, and maintenance? How can we use the sectors as a contributing factor to increase the country's productivity? The truth is, we have been moving backwards, Madam Speaker. Some will remember the days of the JOS, Jamaica Omnibus Service. Policy deficiencies, including a lack of financial resources and absence of vision, led to its demise in 1982. We can recall the brutish minibus system with people packed in the transit and VW buses. They were dangerous, uncomfortable, with regular abuse of students, with loud shouts of no schoolers. Some of us will remember that. It was a particularly shameful and disgraceful part of our history, with units carrying our people on makeshift seats, mostly made of welded iron, with a thin layer of sponge, with center seats from stools made of lumber. Things were no different in rural parishes. People crammed in the few buses on narrow roadways, and market buses with roof racks loaded with farm produce, and in some instances, persons riding on top. There's not enough seats in the bus. Then there were commuters standing at the bus stop for a very long time. In those days, if you missed the bus in the morning, you had better start walking. But there's no other bus leaving the district till the following morning or late evening. Bobby, you remember those days. Today, Madam Speaker, things are rapidly going back to the past. Bad policy, political interference, and lack of vision are killing Jamaica's transport sector. And the bad old days of the 1980s are back with us. We need a new direction for urban and rural transport, Madam Speaker. 20 years ago, we had a vision when the Jamaican Urban Transit Company was established to offer the commuting public a first-class transportation system, with the vision of a modern, efficient, safe, and cost-effective service. We moved away from the ramshackle transport system of the 1980s. That we did. But sad to say, we are back there. Madam Speaker, much could be said about the JUTC and the public transport services, which are now at the new lows and represent a threat to safety, efficiency, and cost-effectiveness, hallmarks of public transport systems globally. I hope the Minister of Finance is listening keenly. A new direction is badly needed to take Jamaica's transport sector forward to achieve global standards. Any transport study will tell you that governments give public transport the same priority as all other societal functions because it is a reasonable reflection of the overall society and can influence the priorities of the country. Public transport must have sustainability, values, benefits, and capacity. It should never be forgotten, Madam Speaker, that transport systems support complex social and economic interactions and reflect the aspirations of a society, such as accessibility and mobility, which expands horizons. It is not a mere hustle, but an integral part of the society and its economy. Jamaica public transport system needs a medium and long-term plan of 5 to 10 years to get us out of the mess and restore the vision and mission of 20 years ago for the Jamaican people. The plan must involve all players in the sector, together representing the taxi associations, the JUTC, the Transport Authority, the police, the private sector, and the government. Everyone must be at the table presenting their inputs and developing this plan, that no matter which administration comes to office, there will be a roadmap to an improved, if not ideal, national public transport sector for the country and its people. The KMTR is in a quagmire and needs emergency attention. In 2016, there were 2,000 hackney carriages licensed. I'm going to repeat. In 2016, there were 2,000 plus hackney carriage licenses. By 2022, it has climbed to near 7,000 in Kingston and St. Andrew alone. That is why we are bursting at the seams. Safety is compromised, driving habits are dangerous, and there is no infrastructure to accommodate this increase of over 300%. The system must be urgently rationalized. Madam Speaker, most hackney carriages now operate like route taxis. There are limited parking locations providing a safe environment for operators and commuters in the process of picking up and setting down. Poor governance from the regulator and little or no policy direction from the government. We are in a crisis, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask a few questions. Is it that we need to go back to the franchise system in the KMTR? How will the JUTC manage routes it has abandoned over the last few years? What percentage of the 120 routes can the JUTC service adequately? And finally, how will the hilly routes be serviced with limited resources? Madam Speaker, transport needs policy and leadership to manage this deep crisis. Time come, Mr. Speaker, for a new direction. Mr. Speaker, while bus fares for children and the elderly are subsidized in the Kingston Metropolitan Transport Region, the KMTR, it is not the same in rural parishes, right, Bobby? The estimated $11 billion loss this financial year and $7 billion subvention are unfair and unacceptable, as rural people get no such subsidy. After 20 years of JUTC operation, Mr. Speaker, we on this side, the government in waiting, declare that under our watch, a massive hemorrhaging will be cauterized. As a matter of urgency, and the JUTC will be put on a sustainable path to fulfill its role as an efficient mass transit provider in our capital city. And in the future, Mr. Speaker, the entire country. That was the vision of the JUTC when it was created 20 years ago. That after mastering the Kingston and Metropolitan region, that it would roll out into rural parishes running from town centre to town centre. But that now is a fleeting dream under this administration. We will address rural students, workers, pensioners, the elderly and the disabled. They deserve no less, Mr. Speaker. Even with the purchase of 70 buses that we are told will be added later this year, and which the minister said should have been here 6 months ago, JUTC will have a huge gap in its operating fleet. There are only 170 reliable units at the company today, when 550 is needed to take care of the needs of the over 500,000 transit-dependent persons in the KMTR on a daily basis. Mr. Speaker, there's about 220, 230 buses that the JUTC has right now. When the buses roll out in the morning, By 9 o'clock, them only have about 170. But the rest of them broke down. Simple. No, they're broken down. And they're afraid of the ticket. So, if you need 550, you're adding 70. Out of that 170 buses that what we term reliable. Minister, at least 50 of those need to be retired now. Also. So when you add the 70 buses, you're not adding anything to the fleet. You're basically at net zero. During the budget debate, the Minister of Finance announced the purchase of 200 electric buses over the next 2 years. That's inadequate. It's a start, but inadequate, and will only serve to perpetuate the present state of the JUTC. And I'm going to plead for the commuters that if you can find it in the budget for this year, to add even another 50 buses and not wait until the next financial year to start planning. Then it will help not only the commuting public, but the taxpayers who have to find an additional $7 billion to subsidize the JUTC. My information is that there will be operating challenges with the e-buses, some of which are cultural. So, Minister, what is happening? You're already facing where these diesel buses, you hear the complaints of windows being broken out by stoning from residents. The e-buses have to be made lighter, so it has more glass on the units. So you have less aluminum, more glass to make it lighter. So you just imagine looking like a TV screen to some of our people. As I say, it's a societal problem. But mind you try to fix one thing on one side and cost you on the other side. So we already have incidents of stoning, and these buses are made almost entirely of glass, since they must be made lighter. There's also a road network, of which is hilly and may pose a difficulty. We fully support the introduction of e-buses, but we must be careful with the specs and what it is that we are including in our bus fleet. We also demand transparency in the procurement of these units, because, Minister, you already have 5 electric buses coming in, 5, in this set of 50 that is coming. 70, right? But the 50 is 2 different. One is hydro and one, right? You have 5, but you have not yet completed the test with the 1 bus that you have here. So you already have 5 on the way, but you're not even sure if they can work. But you have 5 coming now, which you're not. You start blaming the minister. Eh? You start blaming the minister. Eh? Mr. Speaker, the JUTC needs 400. The JUTC, I thought that was joined up government, but there seems to be a division between. Because I heard the 200 electric buses announced by the Minister of Finance. The JUTC needs 400 buses over the next 3 years, with adequate spare parts, with necessary service and special tools agreement to cover the new and existing fleet that will be beneficial to the JUTC. A new fare collection system to replace the existing one, which is now over 10 years old and serviced from the Czech Republic. The system is needed to reduce pilferage and leakage from the fare box. Fare collections, and I want you to listen to this one, fare collections has dwindled from $5 billion annually under a PNP administration to $1.5 billion under this administration. Mr. Speaker, this is a root of the need for a $7 billion subsidy, government subsidy. When we left office, when the PNP left office, the operating subsidy was a mere $466 million per year. So you can see the deterioration of the operation of the JUTC. If you have less buses, you're going to have a smaller fare table, which is going to require more subsidy from government. And that's why the delay, because the last time new buses were purchased were 2016, and it was ordered from 2015. So that gap in ordering buses has cost the traveling public and the taxpayers. But it also costs the economy. But Minister, and you speak about it, it costs us in productivity. That is important. This need has been acknowledged for years. Because I remember when Minister Montague himself announced the new fare collection system. The new fare collection system. It has been at procurement since your time as minister. I can't blame you. I can't blame you. I can't blame you. Mr. Speaker, echoing the words of the former minister, that the fare collection system is critical and has been under procurement since his time. Nothing can go so. Nothing shouldn't go so. It has been even included in throne speeches and in presentations made by previous ministers, yet nothing further. What is the present status, Mr. Speaker? The company is in need of other system changes to improve its process, to retain operations and maintenance staff with better salaries. We have mechanics now. You have mechanics rotating from depot to depot because we have not been able to retain good mechanics. So not only by training them, but you have to look at the salary scale. Otherwise, they're going to go to other foreign lands. Right, Minister? And we don't have. Right, Minister? Yeah? Yeah. And most importantly, improve its scheduling and timetabling of buses on routes for commuters to know and plan shorter travel times. In 2023, commuters will not accept waiting for hours to get a bus and should not have to. They will find other options because there are many other options out there. Those days should have been gone, should never be to return, but they are still with us. Mr. Speaker, the Jamaica Railway Corporation cannot be left out of the Jamaica plan for more efficient public transport services. The JRC is important in increasing connectivity and travel options. Former Minister Henry called it, it's his multimodal plan. The JRC is losing money on its current operations, Mr. Speaker. Its operating costs. I cannot blame that minister. I cannot blame that minister. I cannot blame that minister. The JRC is losing money on its current operations. Its operating cost, Minister of Finance, has increased by 700% last year due to the recently introduced school service from Old Harbour and Linstead to Spanish Town, which was badly planned without any origin and destination surveys. We are not against the service, but it will not be successful with the right policy, without the right policy and plan. We cannot keep doing the same wrong things and expect to get a different result. The JRC has a responsibility to maintain its locomotives and its tracks. It cannot waste resources. The company made a small profit of 10 million in financial year 21-22.
Mr. Speaker, I now ask that the member's time for speaking be extended by 15 minutes.
The question is that the member be given more time to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, the JRC has responsibility to maintain its locomotives and tracks. The company made a small profit of 10 million in the financial year 2021-22. An $80 million loss in financial year 22-23, and a projected loss of 115 million in this financial year 23-24. Repairs and maintenance moved from an expenditure of 4 million in financial year 21-22 to 10 million in 22-23 to an estimated expenditure of 33 million in 23-24. Mr. Speaker, there is cause for concern. The level of losses needs to be cauterized with urgency. Let us not turn the JRC into a JUTC. Mr. Speaker, we also have concerns with Montego Bay Metro. Mr. Speaker, it is beyond me that over a week now, not one bus has rolled out of the depot at Montego Bay Metro. Workers have been on strike. Workers have been on strike. And, Mr. Speaker, I can't see why an agency of the state where workers are unhappy with management and other issues, that while Rome burns, that the people of St. James, Mr. Speaker, as one of the member of parliaments down there, while the people of St. James suffer, the minister tinkers with the operation of the Montego Bay Metro. There are also concerns with the Port Security Corp. 11 weeks now, and workers have not been paid their allowances. Overtime owed to workers. Serious staff shortage of workers having to leave Kingston to go to Montego Bay to go and fill vacancies. Multiple workers carrying the entity to the IDT and to the Ministry of Labour, costing the entity millions of dollars to settle with workers. And there is also staff feeling disgruntled at the Transport Authority. Mr. Speaker, the transport sector is in crisis. We are seeing it. The people are seeing it. Why are you not seeing it? It needs leadership, Mr. Speaker. In February, after the fiasco with the implementation of the new Road Traffic Act and regulations, the Prime Minister asked the National Road Safety Committee Council to review certain provisions in the regulations. The time frame had been set at 1 month, but it has been reported on April 21st that the NRSC was now expected to complete its work in about 2 months' time. After completion, a report will be sent to the Cabinet for consideration and decision. So it seems the entire process, including new drafting and parliamentary approval, will take up to a year. That is not good enough, because there are still challenges and problems out there to do with the RTA. When he comes to speak, will the Minister also say how long will it take for the phased implementation of all aspects of the road traffic legislation? For example, when will the regulations, and I'm not sure which minister, For example, when will the regulation dealing with the usage of cameras to photograph license plates be brought into effect? Has the administration yet decided on which system to be used? Have the child seat regulations amendments been finally gazetted? Are some of the questions we'd like answers. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, why are we not using existing camera networks such as Jamaica Eye and the NWA's own infrastructure in our own towns, in our town centres, to better regulate and enforce traffic flows and breaches? We know that tests have been done, but the government is uncertain as to what to do. What is the present status? Mr. Speaker, there are serious matters that need to be considered urgently. We on this side participated in the debate on both the bill and the regulations, and we have said so publicly. However, we must acknowledge a trend in this Parliament. That legislation is tabled, not well put together in some instances. Debates are hurried, and when suggestions are made from this side, the supermajority is used to quash purposed amendments. In this case, the opposition has made numerous proposals to amend certain clauses in the bill and regulations in the lower and upper chambers, but they were ignored. Mr. Speaker, we remain convinced that increasing fines alone is not a deterrent to poor driving habits, and that will not bring drivers into compliance. The opposition believes that what is also needed is effective public education, not the one that I see on social media alone. We're talking a fulsome public education, a cleaning of the system of widespread corruption which permeates driver competence and inspection processes and enforcement by police. What of the promised public education? There remains serious widespread dissatisfaction with the current levels of fines, treatment of motorists, and inadequate communication about the offences and the fines they attract. The government should not feel that because there have not been no demonstrations or public disturbances that all is well. All is not well. The recent announcement by the government about the huge revenues earned from road traffic fines gives the impression that revenue from increased fines is what is important and not the public order benefits from the RTA. Well, Mr. Speaker, hear me. Despite the fines, there is still disorder on our streets and safety on our roads is not improving. When does this administration intend to restore public order? Time comes, Mr. Speaker, for a new direction. I could not close this section without putting back on the table, Mr. Speaker, the issue of the use of the hedge tax of $7 per litre. During the COVID-19 lockdown, we called for the removal to assist the preservation of public transport and to cap the ad valorem tax, the SCT on fuel. Both taxes together extract billions of dollars from the sector without direct benefit to the sector. I am again raising the issue as the sector is cash-starved. Most of the benefits proposed by the government, including the one-off cash grant of $20,000 and the refleeting loans, did not work well, and most operators did not benefit from it. A rebate of those taxes going forward is the best way of injecting cash back in the system to assist the small private investors in the public transport sector. They need it for reinvestment, and you will pull more of them in the formal sector. Mr. Speaker, it is a fact that our road network has been deteriorating faster than we can repair it. We are still without a plan to initiate a workable road maintenance program. What exists is unsustainable. 3 years ago, the Prime Minister announced the Lengthman program. We on this side gave it support, but 3 years later, the program is yet to begin. A clear danger of applauding announcements. We are yet to hear, even hear, why and when it will begin. Last December, the Prime Minister announced a $40 million per constituency maintenance program. While we are appreciative of it, it is still woefully inadequate to deal with the widespread poor road conditions across Jamaica. I'm even speaking for you. Right. This year in the budget debate, the Minister of Finance, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Finance announced a 3-year, $40 billion road maintenance program, but provided no details. I expect the Prime Minister, who is a portfolio minister, would provide the relevant details in his budget presentation, but nothing. He was silent. I then searched the budget in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation and have not seen any provisions. Mr. Speaker, I therefore ask the question. Most MPs, all who bawling over there now, spoke about bad interior roads and lack of regular maintenance during your constituency debate. Every single one of you over there. Will any of this money, no, quiet man. Since you can't speak for yourself, I'm speaking for you. Because you are gagged over there. So, Mr. Speaker, Will any of this provision of the $40 billion program be spent on interior parochial roads? And I know you're happy that I'm asking the question. What roads will be the focus for this financial year? And how much of that $40 billion allocation for the 2023-24 financial year will be allotted? Mr. Speaker, I will repeat ad nauseum. Jamaica needs a sustainable, fully dedicated road maintenance fund and program. Why is the government not looking at the available data and the recommendations provided by its own agency, the National Works Agency, who has been asking for a road maintenance fund? How can the Ministry of Finance continually boast of budget surpluses and growth? Yet when asked about road maintenance, the refrain is, we just don't have the funds. Minister, you will never have the funds required if we are only to finance our road maintenance from the consolidated fund alone. A dedicated road maintenance fund is our best option to get us out of this downward spiral. Data shows that with poor conditions, vehicle operating costs increases by 30 to 50% and above. Transport costs are undeniably among the factors which influence productivity and competitiveness. Studies have concluded that in the long term, every unit of currency which is not invested in maintenance results in 3 units of increased transport costs and 2 to 3 units of road rehabilitation costs that could have been avoided. Mr. Speaker, I have to give me back the time that them take from me. In other words, each dollar spent on road maintenance decreases by $5 to $6 the burden of maintenance costs to the state and the traveling public. Mr. Speaker, there must be a more inclusive approach to major construction projects undertaken by the government of Jamaica. In my last sectoral presentation, I spoke of the narrative that Jamaica does not have good engineers or contractors to do our major infrastructure projects. Mr. Speaker, that is far from the truth. Jamaica has some of the most qualified engineers and contractors, but we continue to give them a raw deal, basket to carry water. The playing field for local contractors must be leveled, not in a protectionist way, but to give equal access and operating conditions to all. Raw materials, equipments, and vehicle acquisitions are given huge concessions to foreign contractors, but full price and duties for Jamaicans. The playing field must be leveled. Local contractors must have NCC and TCC compliance. Foreign contractors have no such requirements for government contracts. If we are to see a true growth in the Jamaican construction sector, we need to give equal access to our people. Jamaican contractors should be brought in line so they can fend for themselves and be able to compete locally and overseas. It's a shame. It's a shame to hear the comments of some of you over there too, that they must defend themselves at home. Level the vibes, Mr. Speaker, and level the vibes of the local contractors. Jamaica is in dire need of a new direction for transport. So a new direction is needed for road construction and maintenance. We can all agree that a better and more efficient transport system will contribute to our productivity. Amen. So can we all agree that a better road network with better maintained roads will help to reduce road fatalities, increase productivity, and reduce burdensome vehicle operating costs. We can keep on doing things the same way and expect a different result. The time has come for a new direction, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know that I could not end my presentation without mentioning the state of our bridge infrastructure and its continued collapse before our eyes due to inadequate maintenance and inadequate financial provisions. The Troy Bridge again, Mr. Speaker. This is the second consecutive year I must mention it. The situation for the residents of Northwest Manchester is getting worse. And up to now, no work has started to replace it. The situation is for citizens from adjoining communities of Cowick Park, Glasgow, Upton Beddick, Golden Run, and Oxford has remained desperate, and those from Troy in southern Trelawney. And people face danger or higher transport costs daily. Mr. Speaker, you know the people are suffering. The displacement of students, farmers, and business over the past 2 years, 21 months to be precise, is unacceptable. The Ministry of Works is not helping. The Ministry of Education cannot help the students and teachers, as no intervention has been made. I remember when I was nearly thrown out of the house, out of this house, by the Speaker for trying to ask for a little more for the teachers who have to traverse an additional 10 miles. The situation has resulted in students being transferred from the Veronica Campbell High School, Troy High, and primary school. This causes increased transport costs and students and teachers. Mr. Speaker, residents have been forced to improvise and make contraptions to cross the river in the most unsafe and dangerous manner. No citizen in a modern and civilized society should have to endure this for 2 years. Why can't even a temporary option be found to save lives and restore even a modicum of normality to people's lives? Mr. Speaker, the Troy Bridge collapsed in August of 2021. The Prime Minister has assured me that the design and costing have been completed. Funding is now in place for this financial year. But is also being told that it needs to go back to the Ministry of Finance, to the Public Investment Department, for them to determine if the bridge is a worthwhile investment. But, Mr. Speaker, the bridge they broke down. How can now you want to determine if it is a worthwhile investment or a worthwhile investment? Nothing can go so, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the treatment of the people by the Ministry of Works and the NWA leaves much to be desired, and the residents do not think their situation is being taken seriously. Madam Speaker, all of us have been elected in here on behalf of the people that we represent. We are the voice of the people that we represent. And I have been given a message by my constituents, a message by the residents of the adjoining communities that are affected by the Troy Bridge. They gave me a message to give to the Prime Minister. They say that he promised to visit the area last year, 6 months ago, to see firsthand their suffering, and he still has not visited. He stood up in this house saying that he was going to visit. Their message to him is that they say that when the bridge is completed, they don't want him to come and cut no ribbon and give the impression that he understands what they have been enduring for the last 2 years. We need a new direction. Madam Speaker, I also feel the pain of the citizens of the community of Woodsville in Hanover. They are now setting out on the same road of long suffering, where an agency and ministry just have no care. It will be a heavy burden they will have to carry. I hope they will not be treated as the residents of Northwest Manchester and Southern Trelawney have been treated. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, for too long, there has not been sufficient care. There has not been sufficient care about the things which affect the daily lives of people in many of our communities, especially rural people. It is often said patience is a virtue, but we should not make patience a difficult fruit to produce. The people of Jamaica must now only rely on what the Thessalonians were advised. Pray without ceasing. Or the Philippians, who are advised not to worry about anything, but in everything through prayer and petition. With thanksgiving, let your requests be made known. Madam Speaker, the people have been doing that in transport and works. How much petitioning can they do? Surely the government must listen and do its part. Although good things come to those who wait, but Bob Marley reminds us, I don't want to wait in vain. We cannot come year after year raising the same issues and getting no responses. Let us not test people's patience with their representatives and government. Many are tired of promises which never materialize. This is a very important parliamentary year because we are now equidistant from the last election to the next. We will have to report soon to our electors. We must stop talking and act on the persistent issues causing great misery among our people. I would like the people who elected me to say, well done, good and faithful servant. But election is not the only thing to be concerned about. It is also about our whole future. We must develop workable plans to move Jamaica forward as a people and as an emerging nation. We cannot be going around in circles. Work has started on constitutional reform, and the aspirations of our people must be considered fully. We want to be rid of the monarchy. As I put it in the resolution, thank you very much, Minister. As I put it in a resolution tabled 2 years ago. But we urgently need other things to complete the mission of nationhood. So it is not a mere parliamentary exercise, Madam Speaker, but one which the broadest cross-section of our citizens should be involved. Without that, we shall surely fail. Consensus is critical as we plot a new direction. It is important that we set out a vision in this new global environment. As we do that, we must also think out and begin to forge a common agenda that can be supported by all of us, Jamaicans, regardless of our voting preferences. We must imagine our future before we can see it. That's why we have Vision 2030. It is important to Jamaicans Let us build the future we want to see. Thank you, Madam Speaker. God bless Jamaica. God bless the people of Jamaica. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, a very spirited presentation by the Member of Parliament. We've had 3 excellent presentations, Madam Speaker. And so at this point, I ask for the suspension of the sectoral debate. Madam Speaker, I ask for a suspension of the sectoral debate.
Members, a question before the House. The question before the House is that the sectoral debate be suspended until tomorrow, the 3rd of May at 2 p.m. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now ask for the recommittal of items from statement by ministers to public business.
Members, the question is that we have the recommittal of the items on the agenda, beginning with statements by ministers. Those in favor? Aye. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today. Laid on the table of the House today are the following. Laid on the table of the House today are the following. The Chief Justice's annual statistics report on the Supreme Court of Jamaica for the years 2020, 2021, and 2022. The Chief Justice annual statistics report on the Parish Courts of Jamaica criminal matters for the years 2020, 2021, and 2022. Report of the investigation conducted into the circumstances surrounding procurement activities undertaken in the renovation of the Spanish Town High School. Fact-finding report, findings and recommendations of a fact-finding report of the independent fact-finding team appointed to conduct an investigation into conditions of farm workers under the Canadian Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program, conducted by the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. Booklet from the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries entitled 1. How We Serve You. 2. Projects and programs, initiatives, and production incentive programs supporting small farmers and wealth creation through the production incentive program. Also, Ministry Paper number 46 of 2023, entitled Annual Performance Report for 2022-2023 of the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Whereas on Easter Monday, April 7th, 1760, witnessed the genesis of the largest military revolt of the 18th century British Empire, led by Chief Tashi, with the aim of freeing all enslaved persons in Jamaica and to establish a black-led government that would govern the country in their interest. And whereas this revolt began in St. Mary and influenced a series of uprisings in a number of parishes, including Westmoreland, Hanover, St. James, St. Anne, St. Elizabeth, Portland, St. Catherine, and Clarendon, ultimately leading to the involvement of over 1,000 enslaved persons fighting for their freedom over the course of 18 months. And whereas the colonial government of the day declared a state of emergency, then martial law, then moved most of the British troops and navy stationed in Jamaica to St. Mary to give support to the local militia. As at that time, Jamaica was the most profitable and influential colony of the British Empire. And whereas the Chief Tashi War posed the greatest threat to British dominance in the region and inspired enslaved Africans to dream of a new day when they again would be masters of their own destiny, thus laying the foundation of the abolishment of the trade in enslaved Africans and ultimately the abolition of slavery in Jamaica. And whereas Chief Tashi's war influenced the Morant Bay Rebellion, the spirit of the ideals of Chief Tashi of freedom, equity, and self-determination and development can be seen in the self-reliance movement of Marcus Garvey and the self-government and independence movements of Sir Alexander Bustamante and the Right Excellent Norman Manley. And whereas the fight for national recognition of the work and worth of Chief Tashi to national development has been led by Derrick Black X. Robinson of St. Mary in his many walks across Jamaica, forcing a greater examination of the contribution to nation building by this great enslaved African chief, who mobilized a diverse band of enslaved Africans from across Jamaica to challenge the greatest army and navy of the time to ensure freedom, pride, self-determination, and black governance of the resources of this rich colony that was built out of the blood, sweat, tears, cruelty, and humiliation of the enslaved. And whereas Black X walks have resulted in the St. Mary Parish Awards being renamed the Chief Tashi Awards, Rectory Street being renamed Chief Tashi Street, the Governor General proclaiming the 8th day of April National Chief Tashi Day, and most importantly, the ordinary citizen of St. Mary and Jamaica and our people in the diaspora are now recognizing the value, impact, and worth of Chief Tashi's sacrifice, work, ideals, and principles. And whereas the historical research of Professor Verone Shepherd of the University of the West Indies, the book and research by Professor Vincent Brown of Harvard University, the book by Enoch Tashi, the oral body of knowledge in St. Mary, and the countless other publications clearly set out Chief Tashi's contribution, and his work has withstood the falsehood of British writers and the sands of time. And whereas the National Honors and Awards Act gives the authority to the Governor General to confer the status of national hero on a citizen of Jamaica subject to recommendations from the Prime Minister. And whereas the Act requires that an individual with such a conferment of national hero should be a citizen of Jamaica who has given the most distinguished service to the country. And whereas Section 5 of the Act gives authority for the establishment of an advisory committee for the Order of National Hero. And whereas Section 5.3 of the Act stipulates that an advisory committee can conduct investigations as to the individuals that it thinks fit to be conferred with the honor of National Hero, whether living or dead. And whereas the findings of this investigation should be conveyed to the Prime Minister for action, be it resolved that this Honourable House mandates that a suitable broad-based commission be established to examine the records and facts against established standards for awarding national hero status, and thus make a recommendation whether Chief Tashi should be awarded and declared a national hero. And be it also resolved that we set a suitable time frame in which the Commission should do its work and report to Parliament. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I like it. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Again, whereas our responsibility as policymakers is to create the economic climate and mindset that will grow the Jamaican economy in a way that increases the per capita income for all our citizens. And whereas we have repeated for decades that our national trade policy is export-driven, and this position was reiterated in a recent policy document, and I quote, "At the national level, Jamaica's trade policy can be said to always be export-led, even when the country introduced an import substitution policy in the 1950s. And whereas, notwithstanding this stated policy, over the past 10 years, we consistently imported 4 times more than we exported. And whereas our import substitution policy, which is broad-based and still being pursued today, is a dead end for several industries and has not created an export-driven economy or led to any significant export of manufactured goods despite substantial duty protection. And whereas over the past 40 years, the Jamaican economy has seen only anemic growth and per capita income has only grown marginally in real terms, while that of other countries has grown. And whereas few, if any, countries in the world have ever created true wealth for their people without developing their exports in both goods and services. Be it resolved, Madam Speaker, that this Honourable House debate methods of achieving a fundamental mindset shift to structurally transform Jamaica's economy into an internationally competitive, value-added export country focusing on products and services which we can identify a global competitive advantage. And be it resolved that when we commence a process of strategic global repositioning based on a foresighting of global opportunities and a careful analysis of the goods and services in which we have or can develop a competitive advantage. And be it further resolved that Jamaica pursue strategic global repositioning not as a one-time action, but as a process of continuous innovation that fosters agility in recalibrating and improving production, so as to secure a sustained and competitive advantage given the rapidly changing global and technological developments. Thank you.
Questions and answers to questions.
Madam Speaker, at the expiration of 21 days, I intend to ask the Most Honourable Prime Minister the questions in my name.
Member from St. Anne's South East. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained.
Madam Speaker, it is not contemplated for us to do further business today. We had an excellent sitting today with 3 excellent presentations.
Why?
And I wish a colleague would applaud those who made their presentations today, show their appreciation. I therefore ask that the House adjourns until tomorrow, Wednesday, May 3, when we will continue the sectoral debate, and the presentation will be made tomorrow by the Honourable Dr. Christopher Tufton, Member of Parliament for St. Catherine West Central, and the Minister of Health and Wellness, and he'll be the only presenter tomorrow.
Members, just before I adjourn the House, please recall, I noticed that on a Wednesday, there's a lax in people getting to Parliament on time. I am therefore asking and urging because...
Madam Speaker, I don't know for the other side, but sometimes it is very difficult during the sectoral debate for members of Parliament, particularly those who live in rural areas, to come in on a Tuesday, have to go back, and to find accommodation in town, to come back on a Wednesday. And there is not really a transportation allowance in the subsistence that members of Parliament are given on a monthly basis. And perhaps the Parliament, they don't have toll passes either, or hotel accommodation, or rent accommodation, or anything like that. So perhaps, as the Speaker and the Parliament, maybe there could be some address or consideration for those parliamentarians, because once they come in on a Tuesday, if they don't have anywhere to overnight or relatives in town, and they have to go back, to fill the tank to come back to Kingston is rough.
Member from Southeastern, I endorse everything you have said, and I have, in my capacity as a Speaker, spoken with the House Leader on more than one occasion in relation to this. And I do believe that it is something that has never been considered, because this has been going on for the 20 years that I've been here, and it is time that we do something, because expenses continue to rise, and the reality is, as you have said. So I want to publicly endorse something that I have spoken about on several occasions.
Madam Speaker, I just want to make members aware that the matter is being actively looked at, and it was discussed up to yesterday, and we are exploring how the matter can be addressed. All right, we recognize that there is a problem.
Thank you very much. One thing I can say for the acting House Leader, she has always supported that view. She has been of the view, and she has always done so. So while we have the Minister of Finance sitting in Parliament with us at this time, I certainly would urge him to support what I know she has been asking for. Notwithstanding what I have said, however, health and what has gone on before and what is taking place now. Members, please. Health and what has happened in the past, where we are now and where we are going is important. And I urge you all to come out sharply at 2 so that we can, because it is of every member's interest in this House. What it is, we have to say to our constituents at the end of the day. Health, if we don't have health, we don't have anything else. So I'm urging you all to come out at 2 tomorrow. You want to
Madam Speaker, not to make light of the very important point that you have just raised and others, but we will have a lot of goodies from health, and I don't want to be
listen.
I don't want to be burdened with taking everything back to the Ministry of Health.
You know, members, maybe the Minister of, maybe it is that the Minister of Health heard the Minister of Labour when he started his presentation and reminded us of the various things that our constituents wait on. So I really want to urge us, though, on a serious note, to come out so that we can inform our members, because the truth is, our people are our greatest asset. And if we do not have good health or know where to go, then we are in trouble. So I urge you all to come out at 2 o'clock tomorrow. The question before the House is that we do adjourn the Parliament until tomorrow, the 3rd of May, at 2 p.m. sharp. and we should be out here very early in the afternoon. Promise. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned. Yeah, man.